Well, thank you, Joe. And tonight's going to be an interesting night because with us we've got one of the gentlemen I pay a lot of attention to, who I think has focused so marvelously and almost laser-like in detailing for the people week after week, multiple articles a week that I link to on my website, stevequayle.com. But Steve Rocco, and listen, he started to invest in precious metals in 2002. And in 2008, Steve began writing articles detailing the changes in the gold and silver market. Now, I'm one of the guys that publishes a lot of his stuff because I pay attention to it. There are a lot of people, Doug, Joe, that basically are out there, and there's a lot of experts on different things. There's some amazing experts, for instance, David Morgan on gold and the silver, primarily the silver sector of mining companies and all that stuff. But I don't think anybody does what I would call the availability of silver in all aspects, the true numbers better than Steve Rocco. And what's fascinating to me is that independent of me, and obviously independent of me, he has his contacts. And when we were talking last night on the phone, it's just astonishing that when everybody's saying the same thing and there's no agenda to say it, it begins to paint a very interesting picture. You know, it's stated that when goods don't cross borders, armies do. When paper took the place of specie, in other words, we had a legal tender backed by gold and silver, when basically the product turned into a promise, it was downhill from there. So with no further fanfare, I want to bring on Steve. And Steve, first of all, thanks for the amazing job you do, and I absolutely love the stuff you put out because I call it reality-based numbers. It is what it is. No one can jerk them around. No one can fake them. No one can twist them. So just share, you know, at this point, the things that are on your heart concerning the silver market. You go wherever you want and take it away.
All right, Steve, thanks a lot. And Doug and Joe, I appreciate it. There's been a lot of interesting things happening in the market, especially since June. And there you could see it in the data coming out of silver demand as well as gold demand. It all changed in June, and that's when we had that possible Greek exit of the European Union. And then a month or so later, we start seeing the big crash in the Chinese stock market, especially, let's say, investment demand. We see surges in gold buying when there's a fear and panic that there's something going to happen in the financial market. So even though there is some increase in demand when gold prices fall, most demand comes when there's fear in the market. Now, silver is a whole different ballgame. And since 2008, when the U.S. financial system actually died, and the investment banking system died, took Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, it took all these huge investment banks. And, you know, Lehman Brothers was around since the Civil War. So when these banks went under, we saw a huge increase in silver and gold buying, but especially silver buying. And even though gold buying, let's say gold in the North America for gold eagles, Canadian maples, even though they were strong in the beginning of 2008, 9, and 10, they have fallen off. Amazing. Silver continues to get stronger. And so I think we're seeing what's happening now, guys, and this is from talking to different people, dealers. There's this notion that the wealthy are going to buy large silver bars, like the 1,000 ounce. Those are the wholesale bars. Those are the bar that is sent to manufacturing plants, and then they make products out of it. Well, it seems as if that's not really the case. What's happening is the wealthy, and they're buying a lot of silver. When they call up a dealer, they're dropping sometimes 6 and 7 figures, and they're not buying the large bars. They're buying the official coins and the smaller bars. So that's why we're seeing there's a shortage, and it started in June, picked up in July, and it continues, which the premiums are very high on some of these coins, and it takes 6 weeks to 2 months to get delivery now. And so there's this huge backup. And again, a lot of the buying by the wealthy are more for silver than gold, which is very interesting. And they're also buying smaller products. So that's what's happened. We're still seeing shortages of product that started in June, July. let me just give you one interesting data point. Even though there was a shortage back in 2008 when the price of everything got hit in 2008, and I guess you all remember there was the price of oil, the price of silver in the stock market, everything fell from like July down to October, just fell off a cliff. And so investors started buying a lot of silver because they thought this was going to be a bottom. Now, from June to September of 2008, investors purchased 6.1 million ounces of silver eagle, which was a lot at the time. Well, we have a shortage this year, but the difference is, September this year, they purchased 18.8 million ounces, 3 times the amount, more than 3 times the amount, and we're still having shortages. And that's just one coin. So I think a lot of people who don't pay attention to the precious metal market, they don't realize that there's a huge surge in silver investment demand, and I think we're going to see continued shortages going forward. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I don't think it's going to get better. And just for the record, hey, Doug, I'm getting a couple emails, and I don't know if it's on the what stream, but people are saying they're hearing us garbled. Are you aware of that?
No, it should be. If anything, the YouTube might be coming across as garbled, but anybody who's listening on YouTube, go to Global Star Satellite Radio. That's on Hagman and Hagman.com. You can listen right from Global Star Radio Network, and you can watch on YouTube if you want. And also, folks who want to listen without going on Global Star, the listen live number is 605-475-8092. That's 605-475-8092. That's the listen live number.
It's on Hagman and Hagman.com. It's on the right-hand side. Just, right. Listen via Global Star Radio Network. And
YouTube might be having audio problems because we did switch some things around today. Yep. So sorry about that. But, yeah, Global Star Radio Live and or Blog Talk. It's on live there, too.
Okay, I just wanted to address that because emails have come in.
Sure.
And here's the answer, Steve, to the question is will we see more product in the pipeline? I don't think you and I will have to touch on this. We will have to touch on this, but I don't think people realize that it's not just what the average dealer has on his shelves or even what the distributors, whether it's 6 or 11 of the main distributors in the whole country that are the, if you will, the nexus point for everyone to buy their metals from. And we talked about this, Doug and Joe, Steve and I did. In all the years I've been in business, none of my heavy investors have ever wanted 1,000-ounce bars. As a matter of fact, they sell at a discount to spot. In the last year, I would say I have actually sold I'd say this, 50,000 silver rounds to every 100-ounce bar. So that's just to try and share how few people even want 100-ounce bars. Now, 10-ounce bars and 1-ounce rounds, a round, and let me just use some terms. A round is a 1-ounce silver medallion that has no legal tender status. By law, they have to have the purity on them, 999 fine, and they have to have the weight, 1 ounce pure silver. The fascinating thing is that it's my understanding that the biggest guys in the world, J.P. Morgan's a good example, is buying up the physical silver eagles, the Canadian maples, and just about everything that they can take delivery of from anybody who's willing to sell. Now, why would they do that? Well, the metals market has been so suppressed for so long. And now we came into a situation where I don't know that they figured it out. And I mean, these guys are smarter than everybody. But the point being is that the physical price of the metals has diverged from the spot price of the paper silver market, whether exchange traded funds, IOUs, or any form of liar's paper. So I think now, Steve, Doug and Joe, that people are getting to the point where they understand if they can't touch it, they don't own it. So, Steve Rocco talks to different people around the country and around the world. The people that are feeding back to me, Doug and Joe and Steve, in real time, and those are the investors, they don't want the bigger bars. Number one, they're too heavy. A 1,000-ounce silver bar is a pain in the back to literally try and move. I mean, that's a serious amount of weight. The nice thing is, too, is when you're dealing in a barter situation or needing to liquidate silver, you want to liquidate it in the smallest increment possible. And right now, I just did the numbers. The gold to silver ratio historically, according to the Visual Capitalist, is 15 to 1. In other words, 1 ounce of gold would buy 15 ounces of silver, or whatever the ultimate measurement was. At this point in history, it's 71 to 1. And in 1980, it went 17 to 1. So what that literally means, Doug, and you and I spoke about this, is the gold to silver ratio is indicating a severe, what would I call it, break from reality as far as its historic trading pattern. There are technical traders that are trading that, but let's make it clear, and I'm going to turn it right back over to you, Steve, that what we're seeing in demand is something we've not seen even in the golden years, pun intended, of 1979, 1980. What we're seeing is a unparalleled demand for metal. And everybody knows that Wall Street can spin whatever story they want to spin, but at the end of the day, if you can hold it in your hand and exchange it for goods, you've got something that will take the place of cash. If you're holding a stock portfolio, that's another difference. There's only there's only a two-way market as long as the market is able to facilitate the buying back and forth. The thing that I don't think you'll see in the future reality-based Mad Max on steroids world is some guy offering you 100 shares of Apple stock for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Your comments, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. And we could get a better understanding of what's happening now if we do go back and kind of look at, like you spoke about, what happened in the 70s. And everyone knows the 70s, the price of silver and gold skyrocketed. And silver hit 49 in 1980 and gold hit 850. But what was interesting, what led up to this is when they demonetized silver. And the reason why the U.S. government demonetized silver was that the industry was using so much silver, and we were using so much in coins, in our coinage. And it wasn't just the U.S. France had silver coins, Canada had silver coins, Italy had silver coins, even Japan had silver coins, but we had the most silver coins. So they were saying, okay, we've got this industrial demand picking up significantly in the 50s and 60s after World War II. And then these countries were still using so much silver in their annual mintage. And so they demonetized silver, and then all this silver was absorbed, and it was actually sucked into the Americans, investors. They hoarded it because they knew the price was going to rise. So they hoarded all this silver, and then in the 70s, when the price actually rose from, I think it was $1.50 in 1971, and these are annual prices now. And by 1978, the price of silver got to like $5.50. Well, a lot of investors who had purchased or hoarded these quarters, dimes, and $half, they actually sold them back into the market, and they were making 2, 3, 4 times their money. Well, the price of silver really skyrocketed in 79 and 80. And that was due to a lot of larger buyers coming in, the Hunts, of course, and other institutions. Well, this is when the public came back in. They came back in 79 and 80. Then when the price, and it fell significantly in 80 to 82, there was a lot of selling. Well, interestingly, there was international panic, and investors and Americans were starting to get worried about inflation again. So they started buying silver in 82 and 83, and it pushed the price up. Believe it or not, silver had fallen to $5 in June of 82, and then it went up 3 times, $15 in 83. So it was only for a year and a half period that we saw this public coming in and buying silver. Now let's fast forward to what's happening currently. The difference now is, and I mentioned it when I first started talking, when the financial system, when we had that market collapse, the housing market fell apart in 2008, people really woke up, and a lot of people started buying silver and gold that didn't buy it before. But if we look at the numbers from 2008 to 2011, guys, foreign coin demand was about 630 million ounces. over that 4-year period. Now, this is the interesting part. Since the price of silver peaked in 2011 and has fallen now to 14, right now it's $16, there's been actually more buying. If I go by what we're going to see this year, it'll be 820 million ounces. So this has been not only an 8-year buying spree of the public, they're buying more silver now, even as the price falls, which is much different than what they were doing in 79 and 80 and 82 and 83. They were only buying on the way up. And so I spoke with Steve about it. That was only about 3%. He thinks about 3 or 4% of the Americans were buying silver. Well, the people who are buying silver now, it's less than 1%. I'll tell you one more data point, which is fascinating. Since 2007 to 2014, we have 4 segments of the silver market. We have silver bar and coin, we have silver jewelry, we have silverware, and then we have industrial. And industrial still is the largest consumer of silver in the world. Some of it is recycled, but a lot of it ends up in homes, electronics, infrastructure, or landfills. It'll never be seen again. That's one difference about silver. A lot of it's destroyed, or it's gone forever. But since 2007, the silver jewelry demand has increased 17%. Silverware is up 1%, and industrial is down 10%. But get this, silver bar and coin is almost up 300%. So there's a lot of numbers there, but it just goes to show you that something has changed.
Mr. Rocco, if I can interrupt you, I just have this question. So 1% is actually, so what you're saying is only 1% of the population is buying silver. However, that 1% of the population is buying more, or to the extent of 320 some odd percent you mentioned, right?
Correct. And we do have, from talking to dealers, there are new silver buyers. There are probably double the amount, but it's still less than 1%. We could go from 1 million to 2 million buyers, and if you've got 300 million plus people in the U.S., it's still less than 1%. So we could have a doubling of silver buyers, and I would also say probably half, Doug and Joe, of buying of silver is probably done by the wealthy, large volume buying. And I think Steve can corroborate. Even though we're seeing a lot more buying by individuals, a lot of the volume is coming from wealthy clients. And from what I hear, they're choosing silver over gold, which, silver you can store a lot. I mean, gold you can store a lot easier. But I did put this chart out in 2014. Doug and Joe, there was 196 million, let's say 200 million in silver bar and coin demand. And that is, let's say, 1%. If we go to 2%, that's 392 million. And if we get 4%, it's almost 800 million. Total mine supply is 877 million. So even if we just double and go 392, I think it'll totally seize up the silver market. That's the reason why silver is manipulated, gold is manipulated, because if people were to wake up to understand the money value, the store of value of silver and gold, just doubling of demand would totally seize up the market.
Interesting. Steve.
And Doug, I want to address that. By the way, if I'm too loud, am I coming across too loud, Doug?
No. If I can make this announcement, ladies and gentlemen, we are broadcasting. Our flagship network is the Global Star Radio Network. That's where we're all audio, all listeners should go there right now, okay? If you want to hear a clear, crisp, concise signal where no one's too loud, no one's garbled, and that's all we have to do. Thank you for your emails, everyone. We appreciate that.
I'll respond with all emails to the link for Global Star in case you guys don't have it. And I got a lot of those.
Right. And the bottom line here, Global Star Radio Network is our flagship station or network. Everyone should be listening via Global Star Satellite Radio. The link is off of HagmanandHagman.com. It's real simple. Just click the box, bang, it'll take you right to right to the network, and everyone should be happy. We will upload a video of this broadcast to YouTube, which apparently cannot handle our signal out to them. And I apologize if I sound a little bit frustrated, but we've endured this problem for too long. Steve, go ahead, sir.
Well, I think that what Steve is talking about is the seizing up of the market. I believe we're in the preliminary stages of that. One of the things that's hard for people to understand is when you have demand that exceeds supply, typically markets would be exploding. I mean, silver, just to be in $1980, what silver should be $102 an ounce right now. But what I think is happening, Doug, is that the paper sellers have so, how should I say this, just as everybody looks at the Dow Jones Industrial Average and believes that's the total representation of the economy, they look at spot prices as being the total or the real or actual cost of acquisition. That's no longer the case. And again, thank you for pointing it out, but I've been talking about this on talk radio now for 25 years, that we would have a divergent market, the day when the official spot price would become irrelevant. And I see we're there at just ready getting in there. And so when Steve Rocco shows you that, you know, the mint figures just for Silver Eagle coins, and the people need to understand this. There's only so much silver available at any given point to fill the pipeline. The cupboards are bare. There is no Goldilocks coming to basically from grandmother's house, you know, or Little Red Riding Hood. I think I'm mixing my fairy tales, but hey, it doesn't matter. It's a fairy tale presentation from the biggest manipulators in the financial realm to get you to stay in a paper market, even in the paper gold, silver market. I remember when ETFs came out, exchange traded funds, myself and others were screaming at the top of their lungs, it's not the same thing. That would be like going to a hamburger joint, and instead of ordering a burger, even if they had real hamburger, they just put a piece of paper with a picture of burger, and you're eating a hamburger, but it's not the real thing. You're eating a picture on a piece of paper. I hope that's a in-your-face metaphor. The point is that the market has seized up. The Royal Canadian Mint basically quit shipping silver maples and silver 10-ounce bars. They also did something that alienated a lot of the dealers. They raised the premium to the dealer. And just to explain how this works to people, the spot price you see has nothing to do any longer with the price you will pay. And the mints are not stupid, especially the U.S. Mint or the Royal Canadian Mint. It's fascinating, Steve, and I'll throw it right back to you. Isn't it amazing when we get a downturn that even though the demand goes up and people say, I want to buy more silver, there's just not that much silver to buy? Here's the question. Do you believe the mints, the primary mints, world mints, withhold the silver from the market when they see the market is artificially low? I guess that's the question that I get asked, so I'll ask it to you.
There's really no way I can answer that with an affirmative knowledge. And even people have asked me, are the dealers or wholesalers holding on to silver, especially if you can't get it for higher prices? Kind of like someone when a hurricane comes in and holding on to water going out. And again, we need to realize since 2008, the largest private mint in the United States has increased its production volume. Now they produce the rounds. Let's call them the blanks that go to the U.S. Mint for the production of the Silver Eagles. They were doing 25 million a year in 2008. They're going to do 75 to 80 million this year. So they're backed up, and you know this, Steve. They're backed up till December. They're not taking any new orders, and they're one of the largest private silver mints in the U.S. So they're not taking any new orders for their products, their private products, for 2-3 months, and because they have to continue producing the blanks for the U.S. Mint as well as other mints. But you did bring up an excellent point, and I want to make sure your listeners understand there is a disconnect between paper and real physical silver. People people who don't know any better, they think that they can put $10,000 in a silver ETF, and they own silver. Well, I looked at the numbers, and something really changed in 2011. People did put money in the silver ETFs. From 2007 to 2010, that's a 4-year period, it was about 440 million ounces went into the ETFs all over the world. Well, it was about 470 went into physical coin and bar. So it's almost even. A little bit more went into physical. Well, something changed in 2011. And get this, from 2011 to 2014, the net build of world silver ETFs was 34 million ounces, compared to 790 million ounces that was physical bar and coin purchases. So it just goes to show you that investors instinctively are understanding that they don't trust paper, even if it's paper. They don't trust fiat money. They're not trusting now the government, and the U.S. Treasury market is becoming less and less stable. And so what we're seeing now, investors want physical metal, and they want to acquire physical metal. And I think we will see a huge problem going forward, because if you go to a bank, you can get a certificate, a silver certificate, and they will say, okay, you want to put $10,000, we'll take it, your money, and we'll have a silver certificate. Well, the customer, thinks the dollar's worth of silver. Well, it's on the bank fine print that silver certificate, the silver's not there. It's basically backed by the assets of the bank. So there's a lot of paper silver out there, whether it's ETF, pool accounts, certificates, that the silver is probably not there. So there's so much paper silver floating around the world that people think it's backed by silver. And I would say it's a fraction of it. So this is going to be interesting going forward as the shortage continues. And if we see more turmoil coming out of the Middle East and Europe, as well as, let's say, this market crash that we're expecting to happen in this rest of this year, we could see that the silver market speeds up. And then at some point in time, I really think the physical silver market thing, we're already in the first stage of that.
Mm.
Doug, do you want to comment on that?
Well,
because again,
I want to question this. So when this does take place, this is going to basically show everyone the emperor has no clothes. The reserves are empty, and there's going to be this is going to start a cascading effect. Am I correct?
Well, I think the cascading effect, yes, you are correct. But also, look at how hard, I think one of the things that Steve Rocco mentions from time to time in his reports is just how hard mainstream media mocks gold, mocks silver, you know what I'm saying? Now, they won't do it to ETFs, exchange-traded funds, but they will look at gold. Well, Steve, just the performance of gold over the last 10 years has been remarkable. And we saw silver, did we not, you guys, go up 5% in one day? Let me ask the million-dollar question. How can anybody make any money putting their money in a bank? The answer is they can't. So why is that the case? Because the banks became basically security brokers, and they want your money in the market. Second question, these are rhetorical, and then, Steve, I want to turn it right back over to you. There is no way for a human being without supernatural words of knowledge and words of wisdom that can out-trade or outthink an algorithm devised and designed by hell to absolutely take away everything you invest. And Doug, I've mentioned this, and Steve, I've mentioned this. Maybe you've heard the interviews. I know people that shrug off losses of 400,000 and 500,000, and there are people I talked to a decade ago, and they just don't want to. Now, obviously, there are people that bought silver at 32. Now it's 16, and they're mad as all get out, But it's fascinating to me that they don't understand what they bought. They have something in hand. So, Steve, just your thinking on the overwhelming assault by the mainstream media on the physical ownership of the precious metals versus the absolute irony, if you will, of them turning around and recommending, paper assets, but never recommending the physical? I know the answer. You know the answer, but I want you to share it with the listeners.
No, that's a good point. And this is what I found interesting. Ever since when we had the QE, all the QE started, the quantitative easing programs, which is just another word for money printing. They started those after the 2008 crash. And so we had QE1 and then QE2. Well, when QE3 came, and when those different quantitative easing programs came along, the prices of the precious metals went up. So in 2012, we had kind of a balancing. They came off the high. Gold topped out at 1,900. Silver topped out at 50 in 2011. And then they both fell and were range-bound somewhat in 2012. Well, at the end of 2012, they announced QE3. And so everyone thought, well, we're going to see a continued rise in the price of gold and silver. Well, we had the exact opposite. It was like the door was shut. Well, all the QE went into stocks and bonds. And it went to prop those markets up because why? That's where the majority of investors are. Americans are invested in 401ks, they're invested in pension plans, they're invested in treasuries and municipal bonds, whatever. All that paper, that had to be propped up. Well, then, of course, the metals started to decline. And I think part of it was manipulation. So if you can get the oil price down, the metal prices down, the commodities down, you have less inflation. So since the end of 2012, we've had this disconnect. The broader stock markets have continued to go up, and then the commodities and gold and silver have continued to fall. And I think we're seeing the top of one, which is the broader stock market, and we're seeing the bottom of the other. But the U.S. retirement market in 2008 was $14 trillion, and it fell from $17 trillion in 2007. It fell to 14. Well, do you know, according to the Investment Company Institute, it's now over $24 trillion. So it's increased to $10 trillion, just the U.S. retirement market. Well, that needs to be propped up because that's where the faith in the system is. Well, in that same period of time, there has been global silver investment was $30 billion. The increase of global silver investment was $30 billion compared to $10 trillion to show you how small the silver market is compared to the overall paper Ponzi scheme, which is what I call it. So that's where we are right now. And I think we're starting to see a headwind as we had the crash in the Dow Jones last month. And I think what's happening now, people are starting to realize that this is a system that cannot be propped up. And we do know the Chinese are buying this. The Chinese government is buying stocks. The Japanese government is buying stocks. The U.S. government is buying stocks. And they're also buying their own bonds. So this can continue on for a while, but it looks like we're starting to see a headwind. And that's the reason why, gentlemen, I hear that more and more new people are calling up and wanting to purchase gold and silver, especially silver, because they don't trust the banks. They have way too much cash in the bank, and who knows if we're going to have a bail-in. So we are seeing not only small mom-and-pop investors, we're seeing multimillionaires now becoming worried because they may not know all the details of the precious metal market, but they know, why should I put all my money in a bank account? I'm not getting any interest. Because that has been correct, Steve. This has been the mantra. Why buy gold and silver? Because it's a dead asset. It doesn't earn you an interest. Well, if you put your money in the bank, you're not getting any interest, and you could be in trouble by getting a bail-in, and then you're going to have to pay them to keep your money in the bank. So I think we are now seeing a turn in the market, and I think as time goes on, as we see more bank regulation, lower interest rates, and maybe even negative interest rates, we're going to just see more demand for the precious metals. And I think this is going to get quite interesting towards the end of the year and into 2016.
One of the things, too, that I think people need to understand, the second most populous nation in the world is India. And India is fascinating because, Steve, you just did a recent report on the Indians. It's fascinating to me that obviously India wears their savings on as jewelry, gold jewelry. And by the way, people need to know this. No place in the world will they accept 14-karat gold as even anything approaching. It's almost held in contempt. They call it cheapskate gold. In order for something to be pure worldwide, it's got to be a minimum of 22 karat, preferably 24 karat. That just means pure gold. But share what's going on with this silver imports now from India, because that's pretty. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. Not only silver but gold, but let me just tell you, according to the most recent data, and it's phenomenal. India, the biggest demand for silver right now is in India and North America. India, for January to August this year, they've imported 1,800 metric tons, and that is 218 million ounces. It's actually up 96% year over year. Now, last year, India imported, and it was a high record amount. They imported like 7,085 metric tons, which was 228 million ounces. But already, January to August, we're at 6,700, and they actually import more in September and October because it's their holiday season, and so they're going to probably import 10,000 metric tons. And if we take the two largest importers in the world, which are the U.S., and the reason why the U.S. imports so much silver is the U.S. is a large industrial fabricator. China is, but China has a lot of silver production. They're like the third in the world. The U.S. has much lower, so they need to import silver. But we have a very high industrial fabrication base. So our silver imports have been about 4,500 to 5,000 metric tons a year. So here's what's really fascinating. Last year, the U.S. and India imported 44% of mine supply. This year, they're on track to import 63% of mine supply, just these two countries. And what is fascinating about it, and I wrote about this in several articles, we all know that economic activity is falling second quarter. So I've been looking at the data. Industrial demand for silver is down. It just is. And jewelry is up a little bit, but not much. So the U.S. really doesn't need much more silver. So last year, the U.S. imported a little less than 5,000 metric tons. Well, so far, January to July, we're up 21%. We've imported 600 more metric tons of silver in the United States, which goes to show, what Steve is saying, there are big buyers buying this silver. It's not going into the market as in industrial demand or jewelry demand or silverware demand. It's going straight into the investment market. Now, this has caused a lot of stress on the overall global system. And another interesting thing about India, because India is importing so much silver and a lot of it is invested, I think they're trying to access it wherever they can. Now, I went back and looked at the USGS data, the U.S. Geological Survey. They do import-export for the U.S. for silver, gold, all metals. And for many years, so let's say the last 2 years, U.S. hasn't exported any silver to India at all. The most was 0.2 of a metric ton 1 month. That was the most. Some months it was zero. Well, something changed in May this year, and we exported 39 metric tons of silver to India in May. It jumped up 75 in June, and I knew when the data came out for July, it would be higher. We exported 113 metric tons to India. So we're seeing this. India is going to be the largest this year. It's going to be like 340 million ounces, almost 40% of total mine supply. So, and they're buying silver because they know it's a good deal at this price. And what is the difference between North America and the United States, and let's say India and North America, India is importing a lot of silver bar. They're investing in the silver bar. But North Americans, Canadian, U.S., and some European, it's mostly official coins and small bars. And I would imagine this year we're going to see over 250 million ounces, maybe even more. And so with all this that is taking place, India importing so much silver, we're having a huge surge in silver investment demand in North America. It's putting more stress on the system, and we're seeing that in the exchanges. And the exchange registered silver inventories are falling. And, Steve, we talked about that, and I think they're going to continue to fall as in the next couple of months as there's more stress on the system. What do you think about that?
Well, I absolutely see it. For instance, I just got an email, Steve, and I do this I watch my email to see what people are responding to when we're talking about supply and demand. And this is one from somebody from Australia. He said, hey, Steve, my local coin store imported its silver from Australia, and he's talking about the kangaroos. They can't get any deliveries from this country. There are no more silver available. He wrote there is no more silver available at the store. One mini monster box is already sold. A mini monster box is a new term, Steve, that people are, you and I know what it means, but some people may not know what it means. A monster box is referred to as the green factory sealed mint boxes that come from the U.S. Mint. Well, Australia did a neat thing with their kangaroos. They put them into 250 ounce or 250 coin boxes, and then they sealed each one of the 25 tubes of 20 with a laser holographic piece of tape, so they can also tell when a tube has been opened. Well, I can tell you this, that one of my suppliers, my main supplier, I think I told you this last night, that they had 100,000 ounces on Friday morning when I call and get all my availability in the morning, and by that afternoon it was all gone. So I think people need to understand, of course, 100,000 ounces, that's a lot of money. It was about $1.6 million worth. But when you see and we'll deal with this probably in the next hour, people don't understand that here, we'll make it simple. If there's only 10 ounces of silver in the world to deliver, how can anybody be selling 100,000 ounces against the deliverable 10 ounces? That's what happens all the time, and that's what the derivatives market has done. What I'm seeing, Steve, is absolutely beyond backwardation, where the spot price is greater than obviously the physical price, because I'm seeing something and talking to some very wealthy people. They are asking the same question you and I discussed. What happens when there's no clearance on risk to offset risk? Maybe people better understand this. As a dealer, and I've been in the metals market for 30-some years, I have to go to one of the world's distributors, the biggest ones in the United States, but they also distribute all over the world. And they have to be able, if they sell me silver at $20 an ounce and it goes down to $18 an ounce tomorrow, they need to basically be able to hedge their bets. Hedging is a derivative. The word derivative is real simple. It's just a financial instrument derived from an underlying asset with value. Well, then we got into junk bonds, so you could say it's an underlying value of junk, okay? Either way, something's supposed to be holding up the value assigned to it. But one of the things that I'm the most concerned with, and again, I talked about it years ago, but here we are right now. The minute you were talking about a couple moments ago, Steve, you were talking about when the market seizes up. It's obvious that should there be no way for the primary distributors of the precious metals to hedge their risk and offset their risk, what happens then in the market? Well, number one, the market prices of gold and silver explode. And number two, it will come to that point where there's only two types of silver, that which you have and that which you wish you would have had. And I find it fascinating. People will immediately bail on if the price of silver is down, let's say 50%, but they still own it. Yet they don't even complain when they have paper assets
that go from, let's just take Bear Stearns stock, $50 on a Friday and what, $2 on a Monday? So I want to get your feel on this question. This is critical, and maybe you can even define it better than I can. The day that COMEX defaults, or whoever clears and is able to clear trades on both sides of the aisle, in other words, buying and selling, you have to have a seller for every buyer. You have to have a buyer for every seller. So the point is that what have you factored that in to, let's just say, the next coming 6 months to a year, with if there is a severe disallocation, if the mines are closing, if the manipulation is so great now that the physical metals do not exist to supply all the derivative instruments written against them. I'm trying to make this simple. It's becoming complex. In other words, all there is out there is lies and no physical assets. I think this is everyone's worst nightmare from the standpoint of who wants to buy it, but it's everyone's silver cloud that has it. Can you put it in a simpler term than I just said?
No, you did a good job, and I think what we need to also include into what you just said was that the what's happened since 2011 and 2008 to 2011, gold has been going from west to east, and the Chinese and then even in Singapore, Asian countries, we're starting to see more exchanges that were opened up there. Like the Shanghai Gold Exchange in China, believe it or not, they have withdrawn almost 2,000 metric tons have gone through the Shanghai Gold Exchange from January to September. I mean, China is going to import upwards of 2,600 metric tons of gold just this year. That's just through the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So, and in India, they're going to import 1,000 metric tons of gold. Total mine supply is like 3,100 metric tons. And they're going to, just those two countries, those two Asian countries, are going to consume 3,600 metric tons. So what's happening is the East is getting tired of the dollar. They're getting tired of the Federal Reserve printing money, and it's impacting the producers of the world. That's the BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and even other South American countries. They're getting like a double whammy because we can print the money here, but their currencies fall. So we're seeing new exchanges being opened up in China, the Shanghai Gold, the Shanghai Futures Exchange, and so they are becoming more of a physical exchange. If you want to get a contract, then you're going to take delivery. Well, you see the COMEX, which is the U.S. and Canada's exchange for gold and silver, it's no longer a physical delivery market. Very, very little. There's only one depository in the COMEX, which is the CNT depository that acts like a physical depository. And they're the one that we've seen a big increase and also a huge drop in silver inventories over the last 4 or 5 months. So with that being said, when we see this movement of actual physical silver market, gold and silver markets moving to the east, the COMEX is the global pricing mechanism, but it's not a physical. It's not a physical market. It's a paper manipulated market. So it could default, Steve. We could just see it. It could just become. It could go out with a whimper, because we would a new mechanism, pricing mechanism coming out of the east. And let me just now that we're talking about the COMEX, I noticed a fascinating trend. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what the COMEX is, basically there's 6 depositories in the U.S. and 1 in Canada where gold and silver is stored. J.P. Morgan is one. There's Brinks. There's Scotia Makata. There's CNT Depository. There's a Delaware Depository, and there's one more. There's 6 of them. Well, the total registered silver inventory, there are eligible silver inventories, and then there's the registered. They're both the same silver, but the registered silver is available to be delivered into the market. So the eligible may be a billionaire or maybe a hedge fund or maybe an investor, single investor who's purchased silver and they're storing it at one of these warehouses. And they don't want it to be put out in the market. They want to hold on to it. But saw the price of silver increase from, let's say, March 2010 to 2011. We saw a huge drawdown in the COMEX registered silver inventories. And I looked at it, and it was like it drew on average 1.8 million ounces a month. That's how it fell over that year and a quarter. Well, something's happened this year, and it started in April. It took 4 years for the registered inventory to build from their low of about 27 million ounces in July of 2011. It took 4 years to build to 70.5 million. And that was this year. April 2015, registered inventories at the COMEX were 70.5. Well, they're now at 43.5 million ounces a month. It's 3 times the rate they were when the price of silver was going up. And the price of silver has been basically the same.
Mr. Rocco,
yes.
If we could, we're up against our top of the hour break. This would be a good place to stop at. Folks, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on this Wednesday, October 7th, 2015. Our guests tonight are Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com and Steve Rocco. His website is srsroccoreport.com. That's srsroccoreport.com. We'll be right back with both gentlemen on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Very good question that was posed via email. Steve, we're going to kick it off to you. You can take it from there, and you can explain what the question was and how it relates. Because man, it hit me right between the shoulder blades when I heard that question.
Hey, Steve, let's take it first of all. The massive dumping of silver on the market by the federal government and metals and just the whole thing, and then we'll go into the question that we got about why are there dealers that seemingly have a lot of silver, and we'll explain it because it's not confusing. There's a difference between dealer inventory and manufacturer's ability to feed the pipeline. But let's go kind of like we talked off the air. So go ahead, sir. Take it from here.
Okay. There's the supply and the demand situation for any market. And that's kind of a commodity-based pricing. Okay, how much the supply is and then how much the demand is. And if there's more demand, usually the price will go up, or depending on the cost of production too. And that's normally a commodity. Gold and silver should be different. They shouldn't be based on how much is the supply and demand. They should be based upon their store of value compared to most paper assets that I believe will implode as time goes by. So the real assets to own, to me, are real stores of value, not IOUs or Ponzi schemes. And I mentioned this in the beginning of our talk, the U.S. dumped like 2 billion ounces of silver in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, and up till the early 70s. They dumped a lot of silver on the market, and the market absorbed it all. Well, then we had more governments putting some silver into the market, and most of it was coming out of the Asian countries. Now, I'm looking at the data from 2003 to 2014. Net government silver sales, and basically it was China, India, and Russia, the eastern countries, were selling silver into the market. It was 89 million ounces in 2003. Well, last year it was zero, first year ever. I mean, in 2006, it was 78 million they dumped into the market. And in 2010, it was 44 million they dumped in the market. Well, 2014, it was zero. And I believe we won't see any more silver being dumped into the market by any government. Now, that being said, I looked at all the information to see, okay, what did the governments do from 2003 to 2008? All of them. Well, we saw 91.5 million ounces of gold. That's a lot of gold. That was dumped into the market from 2003 to 2008. Silver, it was 368 million ounces that was dumped in the market by government. Now, if we go from 2009 to 2014, guess how much gold the government's dumped in the market? 1 million ounces. That's it, compared to 91 million in the previous period. So they're not dumping anymore. Matter of fact, they're buying gold. Russia and China are buying gold, especially Russia and China, as well as several other countries.
Well, Mr. Rocco, sorry for interrupting, but driving around, listening to satellite radio, hearing commercials on TV, I hear lots of commercials about the government selling coins. Now they sell them limited, I think 10 at a time, whether it's silver or gold. But I do hear a lot of advertisements of the federal government selling gold. How does that play in?
Now, it depends on the commercials. Some of these companies that are saying they're selling gold, they're really not the government. They say like they're the U.S. government, and actually they're not.
Okay.
But there are official coin sales. There are gold. There are the U.S. Eagle, which are gold or silver. They're the official coins, but they're not really advertised on TV. Steve, don't you agree? Do you?
Well, yeah. Look, here's the deal. Anybody can buy from the mint when available. They can buy proof eagles in either gold or silver. Proof meaning a special minted coin. And the public can go there, but the public can't buy the commercial grades that the mint only sells through its 11 primary dealers.
That's correct.
And I think you made a great point, Steve. Joe, all those U.S. government mint, so many of those companies have been hit with FTC claims, Fair Trade, Federal Trade Commission. They are not the U.S. Treasury. They'll use what I call slanguage, liar's language, okay? They'll say, officially released. Well, yeah, but they didn't tell you it was released 20 years ago, or limited to 5 coins. That's because any more than that, you'd realize it's, almost like a Ponzi scheme. But the point being is this, and this is what we've got to hit and re-hit. We have to get people to understand something. There may be, let's say, 10 million ounces in everybody's store, mine and everybody else in the country, 4,000 plus dealers that have it on the shelves. I'm just talking silver now, in any real quantity, okay? My definition of a coin store, by the way, is someone who can deliver 1,000 ounces. There's a lot of, and I don't mean this to be denigrating, but there's a lot of really small coin shops that they only sell what people sell back to them. Okay? Let's say they sell 200 ounces in 1 month, and the following month they only get 100 ounces sold back to them. That's the level they play on. What we're trying to share with people today, and let me give you this question now, Steve, and then we'll get right into it. This is from some guy, I don't know what his name is. Yeah. Can you, Steve, please address why there's silver available on eBay from, he names a couple more, precious metals company. I buy every week from them, and they do have lots of silver available always. Steve, meaning you or me, said there was a 4-week delivery delay, but I get my silver within 10 days. Please address. I'm confused, not trying to be an a-hole. I love the show. I'm a silver stacker, been buying silver since 2006 all the way up. There is the biggest point of frustration because and I believe, Steve, by the way, I don't believe he's an a-hole. I believe he really has a sincere question. Where is connect? You and I know where it is, but let's explain it as easy as we can because, again, I don't think people understand what we're really saying. If they hear what we're saying, but they're not understanding what we're saying, go ahead. You take your shot at it, and then I'll explain it. If I can add to it, I'll add to it. If I can, I won't.
No, it's a good question, and I'm glad people bring up these questions and concerns because they're actually able to buy silver and maybe in larger quantities. And so it's best to put the information out, and so people, they know what's going on and not to ridicule them. And so the thing is, what's happened is, and I speak to many dealers, different levels of shortages. one dealer may have a lot more clients and go through a lot more product, and then he has certain dealers, certain wholesalers he deals with. So he goes through a lot more product and needs to refill. And I spoke with Owen the last couple of days. I heard some big orders. And so the dealer has to call the wholesaler up. Listen, I just got this big order. And what does the wholesaler say? Oh, my God, you just put me back from a 4-week wait time now to an 8-week wait time on that product. Now,
that's absolutely correct.
Is that product the product that the guy on eBay is buying? No. There are many different wholesalers and there are many different dealers. Each one is on a different level and a different time scale. And depending on where they're at, they have different shortages. So the market, we are not seeing all products wiped out, and we're not seeing all the wholesale market wiped out. And the thing is, if people say, well, it's not in the wholesale 1,000-ounce bar market yet, and that's where the shortage is. Well, you don't want it to get there because it's never happened in history. If we have a shortage of 1,000-ounce bars on the COMEX or wherever, can't get the silver at all, then you can't make the product. So you don't want it to get in there, but it will at some point in time. So that's what's happening now. Certain dealers have to quote 1 month, 2 month wait time to their clients. And here's the thing: a lot of customers, they'll stay. They've been dealing with Steve Quayle for years. Could they get silver maybe or different places or wherever? They stay with their dealer. They stay with their dealer. They get trust with that dealer. So that's why we're seeing more bottlenecks and more shortages in certain dealers and in certain wholesalers. And I heard from the largest wholesaler in the United States, from a big dealer, that they're only selling 3 products: Silver Eagles, Kangaroos, and the 100 Asahi bars. And they're the largest wholesaler in the United States. So we need to realize that dealers do have a lot of product. But what happens if we do get a meltdown in the market? If something bad happens here in the next month or two, it's the beginning of October. Well, customers can wipe out the dealers, and if there isn't a lot of inventory in the wholesalers. So that's the problem. There may be upfront inventory in certain dealers more than others, but there seems to be a backlog of getting product by the wholesalers. So if we do see a big squeeze in the market, a big event happen this fall, that's where the seize of the market can happen. And I'm not saying it will happen, but it can happen. So if people can get silver now and they can wait 10 days, that's good. They should be doing it. But that's the reason why we're seeing different shortages, availability in different dealers.
I would like to address that too, Roddy. And I don't know your real name, and I don't have to, but I'll answer your question. As a dealer, I am a dealer. I'm not a distributor. I am seeing other dealers that bought big, meaning they bought, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of metals. They have payroll. They've got expenses. They got to pay the bank. The bank sees that the spot price is low. They get calls from their bankers, and they have to move that money sideways through the market. In other words, I get people calling me, hey, I got an extra 10,000 Silver Eagles. You want to take them? Yes. And for the record, ladies and gentlemen, two of the largest mint authorized dealers are $5 over spot to the dealer. In other words, we can't buy a Silver Eagle today for less than $21. Okay? So that's what we're paying. So I hope I'm making this clear. In the precious metals market, you can really get had if you're too long. You had to borrow the money to get that inventory because your carrying costs, what you're paying the bank to get that money to buy the silver, obviously the downward spiral is what is pushing the bankers to feel not very comfortable. The other thing that's interesting, and Steve, I would say this, it is a geographical and it's also a size issue. Meaning if somebody wants to buy, and Roddy said I buy 100 to 200 ounces at a time, I would say this, that I get feedback from people that delivery is this, that, and the other thing. Now, companies that deliver when they say they deliver, and if there's going to be a delay, there's going to be a delay. Sometimes the post office, for the record, just to let you know, the post office now is taking up to a week to 7 days to deliver a normal letter by mail. And so there's postal issues at hand. But the biggest point that people have to understand is at this point, what Steve Rocco and I are saying, based on everybody we're talking to and based on my 30-plus years of experience, is that we're telling you that the issue is not at the dealer level, but at the distributor level. And the company that Steve is talking about was one of my main suppliers for 20 years. And I mean, I did a lot of business with them. The current company I'm dealing with is equal to them in volume. They're billion-dollar companies, both of them, the one Steve, and we're not going to name them. But the point being is that every day I have to call twice. I call late at night and I call early in the morning, because what people don't understand is that a market tick in Japan downwards, a selling off of this index or that index, can trigger orders. There are a lot of people that work on electronic trading platforms, okay? Electronic trading platforms mean that they can enter an order for, let's say, 20,000 ounces of silver. Let's take it a real instance. 20,000 silver eagles. That dealer costs it's $410,000. That dealer just had an allocation of 100,000 let's say silver eagles for the whole next 2 weeks. Instantly, you're seeing 20% of his available inventory sold off immediately in the waking hours. In the sleeping hours. But it's never on a trading platform. I'm not talking about futures. I'm not talking about puts, options. I'm not talking about any derivatives. I'm talking about being able to enter your order at whatever hour of the day, and mostly big dealers do this, okay? And primarily heavy investors do. When someone calls, and there are people that call, and I won't drop any names, but when somebody calls and say, can you get me $1.5 million worth of silver eagles overnight? And there was a time I could have, I have to say, no, they're not available. So what those guys do is they'll scour the country, and maybe AppMex or maybe this person or that person will have them. But when everybody's out, that's not available. Then he comes back to me and says, what can I get, for this amount of money? I say, let me go out and find out. So I run out and try and find a dealer that's heavy in whatever product the gentleman wants, and that dealer doesn't want to lose money. So he said, hey, I'll give them to you, but this is what you're going to pay, Steve. I then go back to my client and say, here's what I got to pay, here's what you got to pay. He said, I want it. What I'm seeing, Steve Rocco, what I'm seeing, Doug and Joe Hagman, is now in the market, and I mean no disrespect for this, and especially to Roddy or anybody else, but when you're dealing with 100 to 200 ounces a week, and there are people wanting to buy 20,000 ounces overnight, it's not apples and oranges. And it's not the little guys who can't get filled, but the ultimate availability of the big guys buying all available inventory or allocation. And what an allocation means is the Royal Canadian Mint will give all of their primary dealers so much of their production. The Perth Mint will do the same thing. The U.S. Mint will do the same thing. It goes all the way down the line. And what we're seeing is disruptions at those levels because the mints still have to buy the blank silver rounds to stamp their image in. They still have to. And another question I just got, Steve Rocco, was this. Why are, like JP Morgan stuff, why are they buying silver eagles versus silver rounds? A silver round is a 1 ounce silver coin. It can have a medallion. It has no face value. The reason they're buying the face value stuff is because of legal tender. When you go to Park Silver in Hong Kong, when you go to Park Silver, Park means deposit there for your clients, or Singapore or Hong Kong or any place else in Asia, there are only certain forms of silver they will take. So I hope I'm answering your question. Those happen to be monster boxes, in other words, U.S. Mint sealed boxes. And so the depositories are placing demands on the investors for specific products. And because people don't trust what's going down in America, they're moving, and when I say this, astonishing amounts of silver and gold overseas. Does that help, Doug? You get it now that why certain products cannot be available? And somebody said, well, I bought 20 ounces of silver on eBay. Yeah, you did, but you didn't want to deposit 20,000 ounces in Hong Kong. And unfortunately, people have got to understand that we can't eat at the same table the rich guys do, but watching what they do, we can get the crumbs. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, let me just put this in perspective, because I still think people need to understand the overall picture. And there are people that tell me, well, you're kind of creating hype because we can still get silver here, and so there's really not that big of a deal with the shortage. Well, we just spoke about that. But again, I talk to people on the phone, dealers on the phone, and I hear huge orders that push back certain products back. I mean, a 2-month delivery times now for that wholesaler, not saying for the total product of all wholesalers or distributors. But what we need to look at is these spikes of the silver investment demand started in 2008. They've been occurring in 2008. We had one in silver and gold where it really hit twice in April and June of that year. And then we're seeing a present one. What these are I call tremors. This one is the biggest tremor so far. And if we remember, and you discussed this before, the market can turn on a dime. Look what happened to AIG. It went from $1,100 a stock in 2007. Every mainstream media analyst was talking about, how strong AIG was, and it became $30 in 2008. How does that happen? It happens because there's a lot of false data out there. It's exactly what it is. So this company that had all this value, billions of dollars in value, became it imploded, as well as many other investment banking stocks. Well, I think we're going to see same thing in reverse with the gold and silver market, and it'll change on a dime. So when we talk about these shortages, we're just trying to explain. It's like an EKG. We're trying to explain what we see in the market. And yes, it's not a total shortages of all products, but when we see these huge spikes in demand, and then it's pushing product shortages back months, this is an indicator that something is up again, something is wrong. Why investors want to be purchasing the silver, and at some point in time, Doug and Joe and even Steve, we will see this game-changing event just like it took place in 2008. And when that does happen, and we could be in the initial stages of it, then you won't be able to get silver, that or much higher prices. And I believe that. So discussing what's happening in the market now just gives us an idea, a gut feel of how things are changing. And again, if we do see some fireworks this fall continuing into 2016, I do think we'll see a seize up of the silver market.
All right. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Steve Rocco St. Angelo, SRSreport.com, and Steve Quayle,
Report.com.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm looking right at the words and can't even get them out of my mouth. And Steve Quayle from SteveQuayle.com and Renaissance Precious Metals. Steve, we're going to kick it over to you. By the way, folks, we have Steve Rocco St. Angelo just until the top of this hour. In the next hour, Steve Quayle. We're going to be talking about the road to World War III. But Steve, we'll kick it over to you, sir. Steve Quayle.
Well, thank you. I think part of the reason we chose the title for tonight's show is because look at the stress. I like the word tremor. I believe that the earthquakes that are physically taking place in the earth, the volcanoes that are physically erupting in the earth, are indicative. Look, I believe in cycles, I believe in market trends, and I believe that there's a rhythm in the markets. But now we're in an area where cycles are absolutely being changed. That's why TA, technical analysis guys, are really, they're how do I say this? It's not like it used to be, okay? And I remember the days when I was a wild guy, and really wild. I don't mean profane or anything, but in my early silver trading days, Steve, you'll appreciate this, when there was something to base an expectation of market movement on, you could go into the market. Well, all it takes is a couple of days where you're up a couple $100,000, and then a couple days where you're down twice what you put in and lost everything. So there's a humility factor there, and I don't recommend anyone playing the markets anymore in that way. Having said that, the reason silver is such a highly reflective element is people don't understand the scarcity of it. Every now and then, Doug, I'll get some guy saying, I figured out how to separate placer gold from black sand. Okay, very difficult thing to do on a commercial basis. Or they mistake iron pyrite for gold. Now, obviously, knowledgeable miners and panners wouldn't do that. But the point being, here's the thing everyone's missing. Steve Rocco just made a statement. He said the strength of the hands in the financial world are in the east. So silver and gold are moving from the west to the east. And here's the question. What happens? I'm proposing something I believe will happen. So let's just see when it comes to pass. What happens when the Chinese say, we'll show you our gold and all of our ability to back the yuan or the renminbi with gold, show us your gold in Fort Knox. Well, then comes the Jeopardy tune playing in the background. Enter sweat pouring off, the scene. Enter every form of obfuscation, denial, and we're not going to show you your gold, as, by the way, we said to Germany. The point is that the East can back it up. It's known what the Russians are buying. It's not known the Russians' total hoardings. I mean, I see Vladimir Putin holding a 1,000-ounce, or let's just say this, not ounce, but, it would be converted to gram, a 3,000-gram bar, whatever, 30,000-gram bar. And the deal is, and smiling, and he's backed up by Medvedev and all of the Russian mint figures, and I see Obama holding an ice cream cone on a bicycle. Tell me who's going to win, Tell me who's going to win. And when you've got Wall Street pandering, and I will say this, I would call this the pandered presidency of total decadence, okay? And when you're seeing these events go, you can understand why naturally people want to have some form of fallback. What about let's just talk about this too, Steve. Again, it's lost on me how people, especially I get CFPs, certified financial planners, and I get some honest ones too, saying my company won't let me recommend gold or silver physical to my clients unless it's in an ETF. But I have one guy who's very, very, very successful, very famous, and very wealthy, saying I'm buying everything I can get. The point in the physical, what do you think it's going to take for people to ultimately get it, and for if there's an event, and look, I'm not asking for timing because of the event that'll drive the timing, but what event would cause your sensors, your radar, to go into the lost in space robot theme, warning, 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 that's absolutely not in the market at this point, but would be, I would guess, your red button launch to tell all your subscribers, listeners, this is it, guys. What is the event? If there's an event or multiple events, what would those events be to you?
Steve, that's a tough question. And as I mentioned before, the possible Greek exit of the European Union, which is actually not a big deal, small country, but it has a massive leverage that can go throughout the system. So it could be almost any event that, like we saw in 2008, when, at one point in time, you had Bernanke and Bush come out, and they had to reshore the markets. Gold went up $100 that day. There's a seize up that day in the money market account. And so it's hard to say what event will do it. But if you go to China and you go to any bank in China, if you're just a Chinese citizen, you could ask the teller to buy gold and silver. You see, there's 1,000 little nails that are that paper cuts that are happening right now that continue to happen. And what I think happened is the Chinese government allowed gold and silver to be purchased not too long ago. And I think the reason why they did that, Steve, was they acquired enough gold reserve. So they said, okay, let's let the public start buying it, and let's take the gold from the west to the east now in the public hands. But I think the event, Americans didn't wake up to silver until the price shot up to $49 in 1980. And they didn't wake up and start seeing it until it shot up again this time to $50. So what it is most people are just unaware. I think when we see a collapse of stock prices, 401ks, this time around, and one guy, the reason why he's buying silver, or gold, he doesn't trust the banks now. And the banks were problematic back in 2008, 9, but they still trusted the banks. Now we're starting to see certain people, certain percentages of people do not trust the banks now. And this is just the beginning. So I can't give an event or timing, as you know, but I think when we see a dislocation in the market, I don't think we're going to see the price of silver go from $16 today to 18 to 22 to 28 to 31 to 35. It's not going to happen that way. It's going to be an overnight event. It'll be where the dollar is devalued. It'll happen on the weekend. That will be the event that will wake up the American mind. And at that point in time, I think the wealthy, the elite, J.P. Morgan, they will already have their gold and silver stash at that point in time. So that's how I see it playing out.
Well, that's a specific answer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I pay very specific attention to the numbers of the mint. I can correlate the numbers of the mint. I go to Steve's report. Steve, tell people how they can get your $25. For those of you out there, let me tell you something. I have been at this long enough to know who knows what they're doing. And I absolutely am thrilled to have Steve Rocco on this show with me tonight in order to clear up misconceptions, in order to help you understand. This is the thing that's lacking. People sometimes buy the metals, and they don't even know why they buy them, but they buy them because their son, daughter-in-law, brother, sister, whoever told them to. Tonight, we're telling you to buy it. I mean, seriously, I know a guy that brags about having $1 million. He's a farmer in Bozeman, in his bank account at any given time. And I said, how much you make last year? I just made blah, 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 blah. Yeah, less than 1%, okay? I said, do you know what that would get you, since the metals have been down? I said, how would you like, 50,000 in a day? Well, yeah, but it's just more convenient for me. Again, the three things I find that cause people to shy away from metals, it's the convenience factor. I talked to a guy who's close to being a billionaire. I'm not going to drop names. I mean, he's right there, okay? Know him very well. I can dial him up on my phone, and I still have tried to get him to understand that the majority of his investment, he got a hold of me, by the way. I didn't track him down. I don't do cold calling. I want people to know that. But there's still a disconnect, Steve, between, and I mean, a guy that, look, I can't argue with anybody's business plan or business acumen that can make that kind of money starting from scratch. But the point I'm trying to say is, it seems like even wealthy people are having a hard time separating that getting nothing versus having something in hand. There's a great disconnect there. Have you personally encountered people like that? I deal with that almost on a daily basis.
No, I do. And even if you tell them the information, it's just for some reason, I think it's programming. What it is, people are programmed to be Republican, and they're programmed to be Democrat, liberal. They're programmed to be certain ideologies. Now, you cannot change that programming with a little bit of code. It just won't work. That programming has been going on for 50, 60, 70 years. So a sentence, a paragraph, a couple of pages, a couple of charts, it doesn't change that programming. And what changes the programming is the gut-wrenching moment where you see the stock market crash, like what happened in 29. What's happened, last month when we had sort of 1,000-point drop in a day. Those get people woke up. And so I think the problem is now We're still seeing people moving around. There's still commerce happening. They're going to Starbucks, movies, restaurants. We're still seeing activity happening, so no one thinks anything is wrong. But underlying it is being propped up by the government, the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve. They're propping up. They're buying the bonds. They're buying the stocks. And so it looks good until it doesn't look good. And this time around, it'll be much worse in 2008. And so people, even very wealthy people, just for some reason, some are getting it. It's a very small percentage, but most still don't. And I still find that is one of the most amazing things to me, where it's right in front of you, but they just can't see it.
It's true.
I think that's an accurate statement. Now, I'm sorry, I may have interrupted you. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to. How do people get your report? I would say this, that it's the best $25 anybody could spend who owns silver, is thinking about silver, just to let them see. It's real simple. If a chart was at, let's say, 1 inch high with demand 2 years ago, and now it's 6 inches high, or whatever the scale is, that tells you there's more demand. Demand will ultimately override supply. You know, I've noticed too, you know what another thing is that this, and I've said this so many times on Doug's show over the years, that people do not want to take personal responsibility for their own finances. They want to allow someone else as an effective means of blaming things don't go wrong. And I'm telling you, after being 25 years on talk radio, and I don't know, probably with no exaggeration, 1 million emails, and I actually, Doug, keep that on my computer on my Mac at the store. So in case, and that's not spam, okay? So people can see the date, and that would have been, that would be for 2 years now, and that's not spam. And all the people that feed back to me, I've got to tell you something. It's pretty much personal. They don't want to take personal responsibility. And what Steve Rocco just said is absolutely true. It is the, what would you say, the anesthetic of the norm. It is the expectation that things will remain the same. It is, and I've had people flat out be honest with me, I sleep better than you do. They say this to me, and I say, but for how long? Again, I've got a really good alert. I want to draw everyone's attention. We'll talk about it, but please, ladies and gentlemen, go to my alert on my alerts page. But again, Steve, how do people get your report? I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, and I appreciate it. This report I put together for new people in the silver market and industry, as well as experience. And it's like 4 years worth of work, as well as a lot of new charts. And I take the silver market, break it down in industry in 5 different segments, and show people. It's a nice chart, and I explain each chart. Very colorful, very easy to read. And it's in like a silver market, silver production, the silver price, official coins. I go over, and then also the mining industry. What we didn't even talk about, the top primary silver miners, their average ore grade has fallen 44% since 2005. That means what they were digging out of the ground in 2005, it takes them, they got to move almost double the amount of ore to produce the same silver. So in this silver chart report, it's 58 pages long, and it's got 48 charts. You can get it at the SRS Rocco report under Rocco's report. It should be the silver chart report. And there's a lot of information we just scratched on today. But I think they would learn a lot more things, and they could see. I look at silver as a trend, and gold's the same way. I like gold too, don't get me wrong. Both precious metals, as you said, you have to take responsibility of your finances. And I talk to some guys high up in the financial industry, and they deal with wealthy clients. And when they try to talk to them about gold and silver, they don't even want to hear it. What do they tell the financial advisor? I don't care what you got to do. Just get me the percentage. They don't want to know. And you see, nowadays you have to know, because you can't trust the government and what's happening in the market. And that's the problem. People do not care to know how they're going to make their returns. That's the financial planner's problem. And unfortunately, that's a very bad situation to be in now. Don't you agree, Steve?
Well, absolutely. And I'm going to turn this right over to you. most people don't understand how silver and gold mines are financed. And the same people that have manipulated the price of silver and gold down in the spot market are also the banking, let's say, international bankers or investment consortiums that have intentionally wanted to dry up the production capabilities of the silver or gold miners so that no new product comes on the market until after they've driven the new market, or their physical possessions up into the stratosphere. Go ahead and share. We've got another, 14 minutes or so. Share on the silver mining issue, because I don't think people understand that it's for every 25,000 pounds of dirt, there's 1.5 grams of silver. That's how scarce it is. So share everything you want to share on the mining sector, because look, that's where it all starts. And again, going back to our premise, there may be silver on the shelves now in sporadic locations. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is the ability to add new silver into the market through the normal distribution channels and the old distribution channels are already showing real stress. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, if we go back 100 years, it's been a totally different. 100 years is total different change in the gold and silver market. And just to clarify, back in the 1800s, the U.S. and other countries were producing gold at about 25, 30 grams per ton, and there's 32 grams in an ounce. Well, now the top 5 gold miners are producing, the yield is down to 1.2 grams per ton. So it's almost gold dust, and that's the average of the top 5 biggest producing gold mines in the world. Now, silver, actually I went to this, it's called the Historic Horn Silver Mine in Frisco, Utah. That was one of the biggest silver mines in the United States at the time in the 1800s, late 1800s. They produced silver at 30 ounces a ton, no problem, easy peasy. Well, First Majestic is one of the larger primary silver mines, not the biggest, but one of the larger primary silver mines, and they do a good job. But they're producing silver at like 3.7 million ounces a ton. It's almost 10 times less. So we could see over the time, it just takes a lot more energy, a lot more investment, a lot more time and labor to produce this gold and silver. And I don't think people realize that it's so much more intensive now, investment-wise, capital-wise, and energy. I mean, I did a study. The top 5 are consuming 50% more diesel, an ounce of gold to produce it in the last 10 years, to produce that same ounce of gold than they were in 2005. And so these are more factors that show you, while the Fed can print money, and here's an interesting thing, it takes 10 to 12 cents, I think it's 12 cents, to produce or mint a new $100 bill, the new high anti-counterfeit $100 bill. So if they were to produce 11 of those, which is $1,100, it would cost them $1.30 something. Well, it takes the gold mining industry to produce gold about $1,100. So the Fed can produce $1,100 worth of Benjamin Franklin's for $1.30, and the gold mining industry can produce an ounce of gold for $1,100. And that's the major disconnect that's happened. And I think very few people understand that.
Well, again, as your costs of excavation, even every cost associated with 1 ounce of gold or 1 ounce of silver, platinum or palladium, platinum even more so, and then when you take in the South African mines that have to go deeper and deeper and deeper, one of the biggest costs as you go deeper into the ground to extract more metals is energy for the air filtration, the air conditioning, and also just to pump water out. So and I want to lay this out, it is my contention, and this isn't conspiracy, it's based on watching it play out in real life, talking to the people that handle the billion-dollar gold and silver deals, that basically we are going to see at some point the same people that manipulated down, who are sitting on, let's just say, 90% of all the silver and or gold coins that have been produced, because they already acknowledge, Doug, Joe, and Steve, that there's going to be a panic for the real thing, okay? Trust me, a soda isn't the real thing, especially when you find out what's in it nowadays. If they were real people, now the real people, we used to joke, Soylent Green, now it's Soylent Pop, and I mean that with disgust. So the point is here is that as the cost of extracting the metals from the ground increases, as the cost of banking is going up, and as the derivatives market melts down, there will be less people willing or able to step up to underwrite these projects unless it's the Chinese government or the Russians. And here's the deal. I would have to say this, that watching the Russians and Chinese do what they're doing in the economies, having done what they did in providing, China specifically, cheap labor, what was it that built Walmart? Absolutely slave labor. What was it that gave the Chinese their multi-trillion-dollar surplus in U.S. currency that they can go buy anything in the world? You know what the Chinese are doing? They're buying properties. I know you know this, Steve. I have friends that fly helicopters all over the world, from New Guinea to Africa. I just got a lot of friends, a lot of people that I know, and they're saying, Steve, every place we go, we're running into Chinese geologists, and they're stepping up to the pump and promising the countries they'll build infrastructure, they'll build railroads, blah blah blah, ports, whatever. And the same thing with the armies of Russia. And I want to share something. People don't know what the future holds because they're too bloody lazy to realize what the history of the world absolutely spells out in plain language. And for the record, if you go and look at the history of silver on the visual capitalists, you're probably familiar with that, Steve. Silver was more highly thought of and actually exceeded the price of gold in Egypt. It's one of the only countries in the world 3,000 years ago that silver was rarer than gold, by the way, still is. And if you look at the mining figures for silver to gold, what we have is the most orchestrated attempt to keep real money out of the hands of real people and to sell them crap. That's paper that has no value, and the people selling you the crap are taking the proceeds from the crap they're selling you and buying the real thing, and that's it in a nutshell. So that's what we're trying to say to people tonight. We're trying to give them a whole glimpse of the infield of silver. And again, Doug, I don't believe, and I look, I can say this, I hope I don't have to, this will be the case, but I don't foresee much more time, just because of what's going on in the Middle East, which we're going to talk about in the next hour, that this will even be a point worth talking about, because there does come a time, and Steve, I'll give you the last 7 minutes, take them or whatever, that there'll be a time where you won't just physically be able to buy it, because anybody who has silver gold, that's not a fear tactic, it's just a real situation. The minute silver wealth funds step into the market, and a silver wealth fund is obviously sovereign wealth fund from China, Russia, India, whoever, they're all going to dump their foreign holdings as fast as they can. And I don't have the time to do it, Steve, maybe you do it, but it's interesting to me the amount of treasuries that are being dumped, the amount of junk bonds that are being dumped, that's all a matter of record. And isn't it interesting there's almost a corresponding relationship between the dumping of paper and the acquisition of physical? Seriously, if someone can't see that, then I'm not sure microscopes, telescopes, or just really good spectacles can help people to understand that. Go ahead.
Yeah. One financial guy who was really connected, he told me, he said this to some of his clients, and it's interesting. Name a product, you have to put down 100% and not take delivery for 6 weeks to 2 months, and the price won't go up. There's really no product that will do that, but silver, that's what's happening with silver. And I'd like to conclude by saying, and I do get this a lot, questions, comments on my site, mentioned in one of the advertisements, survival. People need to make sure they have their survival set up first, because it's no good to own a lot of gold and silver and be stuck in a high-rise in New York. That's a very unwise situation to be in when we start seeing the system and this collapse eventually occur here. You don't want to have a lot of gold and silver. You don't want to be in a huge city. So it's important to get basics first. You need to have your basics. It's good to have a nice piece of property, learn how to grow your own food, make sure you have seeds. It's good to have non-GMO seeds. And so you need to cover those bases first. And then once you cover those bases first, then it's good to have gold and silver value. Because people say, well, I'd rather have guns and bullets and beans than gold and silver. Well, what if you need to get more bullets, so you need more beans, and the guy who's going to sell you the beans doesn't want anything you have, but he'll take some silver or gold. And so people need to realize that's where we're headed. And so I try to look at the silver market as a trend change that's continuing to get more interesting, and it's developing into a very explosive situation. And it's been all these little events that are happening over these last several years that are leading to it. And that's what I try to show on my website, so people can be a little bit more informed. But I just wanted to add that. I think people need to be protected. They need to understand how to grow food. They need to be able to know how to protect themselves. And silver and gold are an excellent way to protect their wealth.
That's fantastic. And Steve, let me just say this to the listeners. I got to tell you, if you ever find yourself, as I have, looking at these, well, you go on various websites, you look at these charts for silver, for gold, but specifically silver, because that's like the middle class. I mean, that's like the everyday guy's, everyday person's metal. And you look at these charts and you wonder, what am I looking at? Mr. St. Angelo, I feel kind of dumb when I'm looking at these reports. So I got to tell you, your reports, the silver reports, it has informed me, makes me feel like I mean, it connects the dots, and it's very informative. So that's my, if you will, my plug for the silver chart report. It really connected the dots for me. So thank you for that. And, of course, that's available via your website at srsroccoreport.com.
Well, thanks a lot. I do appreciate it. I think people will get a lot of information, and there's a lot of bad information out there. And unfortunately, even when we have this crash, this change, Joe and Doug and Steve, unfortunately, 95% of the people are not going to be ready, and it's frustrating when you're trying to help them. And I know you all do that with your website and your radio show. I know Steve does it, but it is frustrating that you just see these people and they're not protecting themselves for the future.
No, you're very right, Mr. Rocco. I want to say what a pleasure it's been having you on. Again, your website is srsroccoreport.com. That's srsroccoreport.com. Ladies and gentlemen, bookmark that site and save it. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from Mr. Rocco here on the Hagman and Hagman Report. We want to thank you, Mr. Rocco, for spending your time with us, and thank you, Steve, for bringing Mr. Rocco on. In the third hour, it will be my father, myself, and Steve Quayle talking about current events. Mr. Rocco, again, thank you for your time and your insight, and srsroccoreport.com is your website. Thank you so much.
Thank you, too. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Amen. We'll be right back after this short break. You're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on this Wednesday, October 7th, 2015, here on Global Star Radio Network. Stay with us for hour number 3. We're going to get into Syria, current events with Steve Quayle on the other side for a third and final hour. Hang in there.
Now, please hear me. This is very important. The ultimate power in the United States of America is believing Christians who know their God. And the balance of power can be changed, not on the basis of a numerical majority and not on the basis of economic might or military might or media monopoly or scientific mind control or anything else. The balance of power in the United States right now, the only power sufficient to redirect the perfect storm is the remnant of believing Christians crying out together in repentance and getting really serious with the living God and going into his throne room with a violence. For the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. What does that mean? Cut the wimpy, disgusting, putrid, impotent, pharisaical, religious game playing that Jesus Christ said to the Laodicean church in the book of Revelation, I will vomit you out of my mouth. I will puke you out of my mouth, because you are neither hot nor cold. Impotent is what Christ was saying. You're useless is what Christ was saying. But he didn't write them off. He gave them one last chance. He asked them to repent. He asked them to receive the eye salve of the Holy Spirit so their vision could be restored and they could see the true nature of what was happening all around them. And he called them. Jesus Christ called them. He said he was going to clothe them. Notice the words clothe them, as he set them on fire, because they would only be useful to the degree they stopped being cold or hot and were set on fire. So in a very brief summary here, I want to ask every single person listening, I want to ask you this question as your brother in Christ. Certainly no better than any of you, and most likely worse in the flesh than all of you. I ask you this. Can you say before God that you have taken responsibility for the perfect storm that is about to destroy this nation on a level that is too horrific to describe? Have you taken ownership of it? Or are you playing games? Are you dancing around the golden calf? Is that what you're doing, dancing around the golden calf? Because I'm telling you right now, all hell's about ready to break loose. And if you can't see it, it's because you're too busy looking at the golden calf.
Yeah, I think we need to reflect on how incredibly important the last 60 days has been in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. You know, I still get, people claiming, well, nothing happened in September, and Doug, you've addressed one of our critics who, nothing happened. Well, the point is, everything huge happened. We now have basically Gog and Magog, the war, unfolding before our eyes. Let me share this. There are two representations of that. Once before the Battle of Armageddon, when Jesus returns to earth, and then after the millennial reign of Jesus Christ, when Satan is loosed after he's bound for 1,000 years. But what's coming down right now is fascinating. For instance, today, what was in the last 24 hours, 26 cruise missiles that have within a 3-meter accuracy hit their targets. Now, in essence, the reason that's critical is because we bombed the wrong hospital and destroyed a lot of innocent lives. The question is, what did Vladimir Putin mean when he made the comment, look what you've done? Ladies and gentlemen, since this administration has taken over and our State Department is in a state of total, let's just say this, I'm sure they get a direct teletype from hell every minute of the day. And I'm not kidding. That's not a metaphor. I believe that. The situation that we're seeing right now is Ezekiel 38, 39. Go look at it. But with the fascination that some of Russia's top weapon systems have been introduced into the Middle East, going back to what President Putin said, and I agree and concur with him 100% on this statement, look what you have done. I don't think people understand what he said in that statement. It's not a matter of great linguistic massaging to come to it. He's saying, look what you have done with your establishment of ISIS. And he pointed his finger at the White House, not directly. And the issue that has to be asked, ladies and gentlemen, and this, Doug, I'm telling you, this is what keeps me up at night. The very fact that that entity in the White House, who is a communist, has never come to the aid of a Christian, unless it maybe was one token time. And yet the mainstream media, and I want to share this, if you are listening to the mainstream media, you are being brainwashed. And what we are seeing is the absolute hook in the jaw. Now, look, we're talking about the Middle East. You mark my words. Saudi Arabia knows Russia's going to take them. You mark my words. when Saudi Arabia threatened Russia, many of you may have forgotten the story, but Russia threatened to take out the Kaaba, the black stone, which Muhammad, the prophet, said would never disappear. Guess what? Putin understands one thing. He understands he's surrounded by Islamic nations that simply aren't peace-loving individuals. To look at what's happened, Doug, in the last 60 days in America, we have literally hundreds of thousands of battle-aged men being brought into this country. They absolutely, many of them are criminals, and now we heard today that Obama's going to release 5,000 to 6,000 drug dealers
6,000.
and or gang members. Can I say something, ladies and gentlemen? I'm going to share something in a minute. I'm going to read one of my alerts that when somebody puts their life on the line, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about people that Doug has talked to, I've talked to, and the dumb hyenas, jackals, jackasses, and professional disinformation agents who remain anonymous or go on the cowards boards, just continually attack. You've got to understand something. There comes a point, I don't know if you're there yet, Doug, but I'm there tonight, where I say, and I've even had a talk, well, I'll go there right now, okay? I've even had a talk with a gentleman that's laying his life on the line to get information out. I posted one of his alerts to me. It's up there on stevequayle.com, the alert section. And I sent him a correspondence. I said, is it really worth putting your life on the line? By the way, you've seen a picture of him, Doug. You and the man is a fighting machine, is he not?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, all the meow men out there who absolutely use the ladies' bathroom. Look, I'm offended. I'm really offended that if I make a statement like that, the people with the righteous indignation say, you shouldn't talk like that. And they remain anonymous, and they've never stood up for Jesus once, okay? So I understand I'll give account for every word that I'm speaking. And I understand if I speak out of the wrong motive or with the wrong spirit, I have to repent, okay? But what I'm saying is this. We have World War III unfolding. We have the absolute kings of the East now in the Middle East. We have the direct challenge to the slaughterhouse. We have America's military emasculated and absolutely, I'll say it this way, how do I say this, transgenderized. Do you really think a Russian Spetsnaz guy is going to take much concern over America's fighting forces wearing red high heels? That literally happened, to get them to be able to empathize with women in the military. Well, Russia has built up, and I want to share something. I spent a lot of years of my life before I went on talk radio writing a newsletter, and what I used to read then, and I haven't for 2 decades now, probably Jane's Defense Weekly. I read all the Jane's publications, so I used to know weapon systems. I don't know them like I used to, because quite candidly, that's not where God has directed my life and ministry. But I can tell you this, I still know enough of what's going on in the world in that realm to tell you this. This is not to just take out ISIS. This is to deal with anybody who would challenge their position, i.e. the United States. In effect, NATO is already finished. Let me make that clear. NATO is already finished. I'm not the equivalent of Tokyo Rose. All I'm saying is this. Germany is making secret deals behind the scenes with the Russians. Who would you rather have as an ally, the United States of America or a leader like Vladimir Putin, who at least is standing with Russian Orthodox ministers saying that he is the last defense of Western Christianity against basically a pogrom against Christians?
That's scary.
Where is the mainstream media? Those cowardly hot vomit pukes, those disgusting baptized in the volcanic sulfur of hell, standing up, speaking out against Christians. Hey, the only guy that's really doing it, and I got to say, God bless him, is Franklin Graham. Can I say something? Why should, and this is a question, okay? And my source said to me, I'll let you decide, Steve. I said to him, my brother, what good is it to post alerts anymore, okay? And I'll just announce it tonight. I'm absolutely fighting with the idea. I don't want anybody else who's braver than brave, that's a man of God, that you'd give God glory and praise to have somebody like that teach you and influence your life, and putting his life, who, by the way, he has a wife and kids, on the line. And what is it, Doug, that propels you, Joe, me, Pastor Langford, other people, And by the way, I want to say something. I get emails. People break fellowship with me. They call me every kind of name. I'm a Jew lover. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a CIA guy, and that's funny because that's really funny. I've been accused of everything, and I wonder, I said, crap, if half that stuff were true, I'd be a really interesting guy, instead of having 5 grandkids, 5 kids, look, the bottom line is this, is that I'm having a dilemma. World War III is unfolding. We just had the false prophet Pope, who is the biggest, most wretched denier of Jesus Christ. Now, don't get mad at me, Catholics, because I've never said this about any other Pope. We have the murder of Malachi Martin. We've got 2 groups of Catholics, those that believe he knew what he was talking about, those who don't. And by the way, those who don't are still alive. Those who do basically got to even say that in secret now. We've got the war in the Middle East, and one of the, I'll call it the Torgama card, Turkey playing out, where Erdogan is on record less than 2 years ago saying he's going to establish the Ottoman Empire again. We've got Turkish planes encountering Russian planes, everybody's encountering everybody. When is the button going to be pressed? I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you this. To every one of you that's ever sent a real piece of information, God bless each and every one of you. To every one of you that basically is still having to use pseudonyms, like I had one guy say, I don't believe Seal Man's a real SEAL. Yeah, well, I got pictures of him being trained, and I got enough validation and verification. And by the way, that was just a pissant. And I'm going to use that word. It worked for Gene Scott. It'll work for me. Why is it that people who are fighting to help people save their lives, and I want to share something. Alex has been and I'm coming to his defense, okay? I don't endorse everything he says any more than he endorses everything I say. But to take the crap he's taken and to speak the truth and to even be, if you will, the poster child for Matt Grudge telling Alex Jones yesterday on an interview, or maybe the day before, in the last 2 days, that a Supreme Court justice said, our days are numbered, Doug. Your days, my days, Alex days. Anybody who does any linking to any website is basically in the sights of these people. There is no freedom of speech any longer in this country. And when you read, and I didn't even post one of my bits of intel today. I'll probably read it on the air tonight. But here's where I'm at, okay? Unless God gives me peace tonight, I'm not posting any more alerts. I'll go ahead and post the stories and everything because, quite candidly, I am so fed up with the cowardice. I'm fed up, and somebody says, well, you shouldn't let them bother you. You stand 5 minutes in the kitchen before you talk to me about brewing 25 years in the furnace. The bottom line is that the cowardice, the lack of testicles, the reason that I guess this will interrupt my rant, but the reason people can't pass, especially men, the end time quizzicals is because they've lost their testicles, okay? And everyone is so, and I'm responsible for that statement, not Doug or Joe. Everyone is so preoccupied with the mundane and the moronic, okay? Everyone who's sitting watching the football games, the basketball games, all the spectator sports, and wondering, gee, what happened to our country? We've knocked out foreign troops here. And oh yeah, on Jade Helm, let me say this to all you critics. None of that stuff ever went back to where it came from. Let me make it real easy. The United Nations, the TPP, all of everything that's going on is to make war against the white, yes, white, American, Christian, gun owner, constitutionals, and not just white. Look at the way Ben Carson's being attacked by the National Enquirer. It's not just a matter of color, but it's a matter of freedom. Yet the Civil War that's brewing is getting ready to take off. And when that goes into full-scale effect in the middle of the country, like Dimitri Duduman, if you think I'm making this stuff up, go to DUDUMAN and take a look at it. I talked to an LDS, shared emails with an LDS guy, and he says, believe me, Steve, we understand we're in the sights. You know, two people you probably could ask, do they trust the government or the Native Americans? The answer is no. Or the Mormon Church, the answer is no. For the record, I'm not a Mormon. For the record, I don't agree with their theology, but I admire their family stance, and I admire the fact that when the Mormon Church did not bend or bow to a presidential visit to get them to accept the gay lifestyle. They didn't, you know. So let me share this, Doug. We have a breath away. I don't know when the breath is going to be breathed. The issues that are confronting this nation now are so beyond most people's comprehension. The mind of man, as the angel told Dimitri Duduman, cannot even embrace the level of debauchery and butchery, okay? And look at how the desensitization. We've got our brothers and sisters being beheaded saying, help me, Jesus. And we've got the West Church saying, there's no help for you. You know, trust Jesus. We're not going to help you, except there are exceptions to what I'm saying. There are men and women laying down their life, fighting with the Peshmerga and the Kurds and others over there, doing everything they can do. We've got brave guys on our border, you know, and we've got all this taking place. And yet, again, beyond the burp and the breaking of wind are the only noises that seem to be voices that are being raised about our brethren and sisters being slaughtered. And I got to tell you, Doug, this got to me. So I want to take everybody right now to an alert I got, okay? And my brother who sent this to me, I will get an answer from the Lord, because, again, I want to thank you for your bravery. I want to thank you for service to the country, and I pray, and this is my prayer for you, that you will be at the right place at the right time, never the wrong place at the wrong time, and that the living God will deliver you and your family. And I thank God for your stalwartness in showing me what a true warrior for Jesus Christ is all about. I'll tell you what's cool is when guys like my source get saved, to them that are forgiven much, they love much. So I want you to go to stevequayle.com. Make sure I don't add, make sure I don't detract, since I'm the one that puts it up. You know, I can pretty much tell you word for word what's up there, but I want to read it. And Doug, yes, I'm fired up, because we're soon to be fired upon, okay? If you can't get fired up, ladies and gentlemen, because you're soon to be fired upon, then I think that, I think that there's a point coming and the decision will be made for me, but I have to make the decision for ours. It's not, my concern for people's safety, Doug, is what's really on my heart, okay? I know what it's like to have people murdered because of information they gave me. And, I have got, Lord, please help my mouth that I don't let go, because, Jesus, I don't want to say what I want to say. I won't say what I want to say. Warning of how serious right now from federal active LEO source high up. Whether you believe me or not, Doug has been copied. Doug Hagman has been copied on this. He's seen the pictures. He's seen the credentials. This is no Bravo Sierra. This is no spineless jellyfish in the aquarium of life with surface scum floating on the top. Gee, new metaphors. Like I told you before, Steve, there's a lot of us out there in the top secret and beyond community that is pushing out intel little by little. This, sadly, is my mindset now. Those that I've told, I gave all the same warning. When it starts, and if you can make it to me, don't be empty-handed. He's saying, don't come to me with nothing, expecting me to take care of you. How many of you, I'm going to interrupt this and speak to this email, because this has really provoked me to do something. How many of you have heard from friends and relatives, or even wise-ass enemies, or people that have done nothing but make fun of you, saying, I'm coming to your house when it all gets bad? Oh, really? And then he goes on, my source goes on to say, and then I would hear their laughs, and I would go further into my warnings. When this happens and you come to my protection empty-handed and expecting me to take care of you, you are going to be surprised at my lack of response. This may sound bad. In fact, I know it does, but I had to tell my oldest brother after I tried waking him up
what is going to happen, that if he came empty-handed, he would leave with only the shoes on his feet. This is how seriously it will get, Steve. Thankfully, I'm a Christian. My values would not allow me to do such an action, but the mercenary side of me would. What I'm trying to explain is it's so dead serious right now that if I were to talk to people who didn't come prepared, I would be taking, that if I were to take people in who did not come prepared, I would be taking my small ration of food away from my children. That's not happening. Also, I praise God he gave me my wife who can keep that side of me in balance during these situations. But I still have to wait for days or weeks to get an email response from someone in crime stats. If the U.S. Army, now here, listen to this, everyone. If the U.S. Army has a plan to shut down and stop all traffic and significant incidents from happening in New York City on the first day, fight the city on the second day, capture the city on the third day, and by the fourth day move on to another city, then that would tell us that 24 hours after a massive shutdown or a martial law event, you're screwed, and you ain't going to get out of it in no time soon. I'm quoting. If this is offensive to you, please go put your head in the sand or get it out of where it doesn't belong. I want you to know that's part of my damn job. I'm quoting. It's hard being an insider. It's hard knowing when to stop and get out of, when to know that I've gone too deep. Well, I'm at the water's edge, looking into the abyss, and the next step is the plunge. Please, Steve, be ready. But think of this. Can you stop a platoon of infantry Marines or Russians that are accompanied with a few tanks and drones carrying lethal weapons? Only safe that is to go to a place where choke points and concealment go hand in hand. Time to go into the woods. Overhead, tree cover can break up heat signatures. Thousands of trees can block tanks and ground troops. Choke points and concealment plus cover. Now, Doug, I don't know if you read this, but this really hit me, okay? This took me back. Your homes are coffins, your cars are hearse, and no commercial-grade underground bunker or reinforced house can stop me from wanting to get to you, period. There is nothing you can do about it. Get out of the cities, get out of the towns. Time for running and hiding will be irrelevant when you have no place to go. Oh, yeah, for those who love their cell phones and tablets, if you go into the woods or mountains or valleys to make your shelter, don't bring your electronics. Don't bring your electronics. You imagine some people run... Yeah, that should be a given, but it's not, okay? If you feel you have to, then disable them by wrapping them up in some EMP pouches and foil, take the battery out. It can all be tracked. It's all being tracked anyway. Be prepared. Make your shelter now. Make it small. Make sure off the beaten path. And here's what he said. Now, I got news for you. He knows the world in which he's coming from. I haven't even begun to tell you what he shared with me about what they encountered in Iraq, the real zombies. Well, I don't believe there are such things. Then turn off Hagman and Hagman and go back to your own bowl or vial of indifference, Listen to this. He said, make sure you're off the beaten path. I have 12 shelters that only need supplies, made from the environment. Looks like it belongs there. Think of why we couldn't defeat the Vietnamese. Sorry for the rant, but I'm at the point that I can't be civil about this sort of thing anymore. All I can do is try to scare sense into people. God help us all. Lord help me when it starts, and that's who I just prayed for. I'm flabbergasted at, Doug, is that most Christians are almost like they take the Barbara Bush denial. Oh, I don't want to fill my beautiful mind with such horrible things, I don't want to fill my beautiful mind. Your mind is so filled with neuro-linguistic programming, infrasonic subconscious altering thoughts that you've already pacified. See, that's the problem, Doug, and that's why they got to take out, quote, who they see as the heavyweights. Jade Helm 15, look, the United Nations Security Council is already signing secret deals with Obama. What was your thought, Joe and Doug? I want to let you guys speak. When you found out that they're being welcomed in here to deal with domestic terrorists, which ultimately means gun owners, Christians, of course, Christians first, constitutionalists, Bill of Rights people, Ron Paul voters, homeschoolers, anybody who's ever complained, what was your thought? Let's go to Joe. What was your thought?
Well, my thought was all the previous lexicons and manuals weren't just for show, and they were they're implementing, they're moving in against those who want individualism instead of collectivism. They're making good on their promise.
Absolutely. Doug?
Steve, real simple, and ladies and gentlemen, real simple. Everything that Steve had said before, told me before, when I laughed, when I chuckled, when I even, openly said, "Hey, Steve, I think you're a little bit off on this. I think you're hyping this up too much." When I said that to Steve, immediately, it hit me, and I realized, boy, some investigator I am. Really, and it's all happening. It's all real, and here it is. And if you don't believe it, well, then, as Steve said, we can, I'm sure we can turn on Extreme Makeover Pentagon Edition, I suppose. But, it's all right there.
Well, okay, how will it play out? We already know, and let me just ask three questions. What are hundreds of thousands of military-age men from the Middle East, Muslims who hate Christians, obviously, who won't even accept help if it had a red cross on it? They mean starving, and they just burned, or tossed it back to the Hungarians that were trying to help them. What is the real reason for all the immigration coming into the United States? Okay, point one. Point two, is it conceivable that all the arms and ammunition that we remember seeing from DHS and other areas are being positioned and strategically stockpiled for those who are coming from the outside to take us over? We don't have a Trojan horse. We got a Trojan policy. And unfortunately, it's not a prophylactic that will keep the country from being raped. We are now in a situation where strangers from without possess us from within, a curse out of Deuteronomy. We are now the borrowers and not the lenders, and the lenders will come out on top, and the borrowers will be brought down very low. The takeover is au fait accompli, meaning it's already accomplished. People send me emails, Doug, saying, well, can't we all get together and pray and listen? Yes, we can. But years ago, and I was on talk radio and I'm on record over it, is that I said, God has spoken to me. Well, he hasn't spoken to me. Well, I said, well, then I pray he does. You're not to pray for the country, Steve. It's been given over. I gave them chance after chance, sent warning after warning, and still they will not listen. Yet they harden their hearts against me and mock the Son of my love, Jesus Christ. How any Christian, and the Middle Eastern Christians are showing me what real faith is. They're showing me what it means to die for their faith. And Doug, I used to say, if you can't live for your faith, what makes you think you can die for it? Well, I don't want to be socially unacceptable. The people will cut your heart out and eat it, just like they did in the French Revolution. You're worried about what they think? I love what Matt Drudge said last night. He said, I've had a 20-year good run. He said, I don't care if there's a survey on the top of my site, love me or hate me. I wish I could have said that. I can't, because it's gotten to me over the years, betrayal at the hands of people. I'm sorry, I'm not good at receiving betrayal, but it's gotten to me. But what's gotten to me more is that it truly, the cowardice, the absolute, what would I call this? I don't know any word. I don't have a word great enough to define the contempt I have for the nameless people. That's why I asked you. I had one guy, just one woman guy, I don't know, coward, said, why do you always scream at people? Well, I can't tell my volume because I have really bad hearing, okay? And I need a miracle in my ears. I've got the best, hearing aids, but they're not working any longer to the degree I need them to. So I'm frustrated, but what I'm more frustrated by is the fact that people will spend more time bitching, I'm sorry if you hate the word, slandering, gossiping, belittling, lying, and all that. And people say, well, you just got to toughen up. You spineless coward, never send me that statement. And Doug, I'm just tonight, I'm come to the point where do I dare post any more alerts that could get people killed? And these people are brave. They know it might cost them their life. But I say to God,
if you're gonna keep me on these, and here's where I'm at. I said, Lord, you've got to give me a sign. You've got to give me a sign that you're going to protect these men and women. I cannot, Lord, nor will I be a partaker of their untimely deaths, okay? I just won't do it. After 25 years on talk radio, and I'm not saying I'm not doing talk radio. I'm only talking about not posting any more alerts. And so I'm asking the Lord, and pray for me tonight, what do you want me to do, Lord? Because I have been unable, okay? And I'm going through soul searching, warning veterans, doing everything I can, helping this guy, buying this guy teeth, feeding this one. Some of my clients who have spent hundreds of thousands in donation feeding West Coast homeless shelters, literally one couple. And the bottom line is doing everything we do, and at the end of the day, 335,000 vets are dead from the time I first gave that warning. I'm considered a pariah in the Veterans Administration. If anybody brings up my name, they bring, security and the shrinks in, because somehow they think that telling the truth will prompt some guy to get up and go wacky. Like one guy said, Steve, I got both my legs missing, and a vet, And he sent me a letter, and as I sat there, I thought, God, I wish he still had feet I could wash. That was my response, okay? Mm. This is a man's man, and these are the people we're killing off. Now we have 865,000 vets, Doug, that are waiting for this, and I warned them because the vets were the only one that could have made a difference. And I want to say this. Jesus said, let your yeas be yeas and your nays be nay, because anything more than that proceedeth out of sin. That's why he said don't make a vow. The reason Jesus said that is the fallen angels made a vow to go and do this thing, which was interbreed with humanity. That's what it's talking about. That's what the book of Enoch explains. Fast forward to the military. Isn't it interesting that all those generals who could have made a difference didn't? Isn't it interesting that the ones that tried, obviously there were ones that were murdered, but I actually knew 4- and 5-star generals, and yes, there are those that could have made a difference and didn't, And so here's the thing. The idea that somehow we go on talking on talk radio, or I go on posting on, and yet when does it finally set in? Like Steve Rocco just said, it only will set in when the banks close, when reverse hypothecation, when there's a cyber attack. PayPal went down, not a yawn. The next day I was able to get my money. Well, think beyond that, and I won't say what I was going to say. Think beyond that when you can't. The cyber attacks, the hacking going on, the manipulation, the overnight. And I will tell you this, in 1 hour, you mark my words, 1 hour, the entire financial system of the United States will be brought to its knees. It can be done by cyber attack, more easily done by an EMP. The idea that there's anybody who trusts the U.S. any longer, show me anybody except Great Britain. And Britain finally realized that they better do something about their defense budget or they're toast. Look at all of the denial over chemtrails. This is kind of a get with it, people, because this is where we're at right now. Will the air raid sirens even go off? I doubt it. Will it take 6 or 16 nukes to get people to say, well, as long as it didn't happen in my little part of Indiana or my little part of Arkansas, who the hell cares? Well, again, you can't look at it this way. Everybody has got a stake in this thing. Everybody. What about the middle class? Ladies and gentlemen, the plan for immigration is simple. Placement and destruction. That's why your children can't get jobs after you spent $100,000 getting them educations. Oh, and you want to go into the medical field and be a doctor? Good luck. Those guys have a new financial prison system over their head. And let's talk about all the naturopaths and the cutting-edge MDs who are specializing in going to the cause of disease, and they're getting whacked, murdered, assassinated. What is it, 15 now, Doug? And hardly a yawn, no mention. And mainstream vomit brokers just absolutely keep throwing out their trash day in, day out, day in, day out. I got news for you. President Putin told the truth. Look what you have done. And he should have gone on, and he didn't. He should have gone on and said, and you, America, have caused the greatest upheaval in the Middle East where there cannot be peace now. And I said it on your show. Do you remember, Doug, when I said the word of the Lord, and so what if I don't go on tomorrow, or I never go on again? But do you remember when I said the Lord had spoken and gave me those scriptures in Jeremiah and other places about that the nation that turns against God becomes a hissing in the nostrils of their enemies?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was early on.
Yeah, and that was early on. And the only word that I get from talking to a lot of people, and look, I'll tell you one thing I learned about the Russians, okay? I didn't deal with a lot, maybe a half a dozen, but they were who's who during the Cold War, is simply this, that they absolutely would tell you, they'll call it, I'm not talking about propaganda now, but after the Cold War, they'll just tell you like it is, okay? And what's fascinating to me is that the vilification, and I'm not a defender, but look, if Vladimir Putin blasts the hell out of ISIS, puts an end to that, and the slaughter of the innocent Christians, and listen to this is amazing, America is still thinking it's a Christian nation, Putin's being seen with two Russian Orthodox priests praying for his troops, okay? Well, I got news for you. Russian Orthodox Church still acknowledges the God of heaven, and they still acknowledge Jesus. Well, he's a communist. What do you think we got in our country? We don't just have one or two. The entire government has sold you out, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and then we've got a senator who's saying, well, we need to arm the Syrian rebels with Stinger missiles, because look what they did during the days of the Mujahideen, when Afghanistan and Russia was fighting Afghanistan. Russia warned us, don't go into Syria, don't go into Afghanistan. You can't win. Guess what? We didn't win. Russia warned us, don't go in. Why will we not learn? Because, Doug, it's the agenda. And here's what I want to close out tonight. I don't know how long we got. World War III must be created. Everything you see stress being generated all over the planet is to bring about the diabolical plan of the New World Order, which is to destroy all nationalities, boundaries, cultures, and true history, to bring us into that new ubiquitous Borg of rule and reign by Antichrist, controlled by the devil, with the ultimate destruction of all humanity at stake. Jesus said it. His people don't believe it. The prophets wrote about it. The people that can quote the scripture in Hebrew, most of those don't believe it, because they always put it in a past tense sense, but won't relate it to contemporary time, okay? So that's why I'm trying to find out if there's any more value to putting out the alerts. Judging from my feedback, I would say no. You want to chime in? Either one of you. What advice would you give to me? And this is real, okay? I just shared why I'm sharing it. Hearing me, Doug, what advice would you give to me?
Wow, Steve, talk about putting somebody on the spot. But, I'll just say this. I'm going to turn it to Joe because I know he's got something to say. Steve, the value of your alerts to those with ears to hear and receptive to information they're invaluable. And you know something, we're watchmen, and I didn't ask to be a watchman. I don't remember filling out an application, and I'm sure you didn't either. But you know something, we've got this position, and I really ask you humbly as a brother in Christ that you continue, because the good, the information that you provide certainly outweighs the critics that you endure.
Absolutely. Regardless of how many unbelievers out there, we could have all the proof in the world, even though faith isn't based on proof, and it wouldn't matter. But I couldn't tell you how many times I've talked to people or received emails or somebody has mentioned, the Q alerts and the alert section and what you put on your website as being so important and vital. We got to just continue to do what we do for the remnant of the body of Jesus Christ, and the people that won't hear it or be part of it, then that's their loss. But for those who are paying attention, just keep going.
Well, that's good advice. Let me give you a good example. Today I posted two stories by, Stephen Sanford and Susan Duclos, and this is a guy from Australia. Two of your posts today come up suspicious webpage blocked. They are say goodbye to internet free speech and Jade Hell military assets positioned. Of course they do. Ladies and gentlemen, how do I say this? The last thing Australia's government wants is Jade Helm military assets positioned. And basically the basis of that story was they were never sent back. Remember we were told they were exercises, blah, blah, blah. And that was BS from the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. The tongue can no man tame. I've submitted mine to the Holy Ghost. I mean that. Say goodbye to internet free speech. We just saw a remarkable thing. Do you find it, like it, hate it, complain as you will, but Matt Drudge did something. He came from relative obscurity into being probably the most powerful internet voice in the history of the internet. Would you agree?
Amen. Yep.
And I mean, when you got Hillary, the Billary, queen of the cauldron, basically, Matt, he's doing the job. But imagine this. Imagine you and I, Doug, and Joe, and everyone listening in our audience can't get any of these reports anymore, not just the alerts. And I want to make it clear, I'm not shutting down my website. I'm not doing talk radio. I'm just saying, is it worth it any longer to specifically expose anyone else to third-party harm, okay? I got it. Listen, that's my issue to work out with the Lord. But I'm just telling you because I love you guys and I love the listeners, and I don't like my critics any more than I do. But you know why I don't like my critics, and especially the ones that parade as Christians? Because I have literally seen millstones. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the real millstones. They got to weigh, anywhere from at least 2,000 to 4,000 pounds. And I think how many people are looking for someone to tell them about Jesus, only to have some Arnold Henry, and all the cops know what that means, to go on and basically say, Quayle's not a Christian. Quayle's a this. Quayle's a that. Yeah. Or have somebody saying, I heard you said you're not a Christian. No, what I said was the word Christian doesn't have any meaning any longer. Is Barack Obama a Christian? Yeah. Does that have any meaning? No. So what has meaning? A follower of Jesus Christ, washed in his blood, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, repenting, turning from his sin. Jesus said, if you don't confess me before men, I won't confess you before my Father. Well, I think, and I'm just throwing this out there unless the Lord shows me different, I think 80% of the Christians are guilty of not confessing Jesus. I personally will not call Jesus Christ. I'll quote the scripture, but Jesus is the Christ. So when Jesus said, many will come claiming I am Christ and deceive many, we've got the Messiah. Yeah, it's a critical issue, okay? Yeah. What's the name hated by which all men will bow, every knee confess, and every tongue confess? Jesus, okay? Do away with Jesus. It didn't say at the name of Christ. It's at the name of Jesus. Someone says, well, what does that mean? Well, obviously the Hebrew word, God saves his people and everything else, but, then I get everybody else. So I'm not stammering. I'm just saying this. I am extremely troubled at putting anybody else in harm's way. You thought about that too, Doug. We talked about it.
Sure. Yep.
We talked about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please pray for me. I just have got to get peace on this. And by the way, the guy that sent that information to me said, look, my wife and I have prayed about it. It's in your hands, Steve. They didn't tell me not to stop,
Well, and that's the other side of the coin, Steve. I think that there's a what would you call it, an accountability, or at least the weight of that decision lies in the hands of the person, or in the heart of the person, perhaps more appropriately, giving the information, sharing the information. They know the risks. At least if they're in that position, they certainly should. So, it's really a fine line. And listeners, if you think that this is hype, please don't, because if you think that information or all answers to questions could be answered by a Freedom of Information Act request, then you're certainly naive. If you think that the government will roll over and give you information upon asking for it, then you're naive. These whistleblowers are not getting the protection that they need. And by the way, Steve, the whistleblowers will suffer immensely under the new legislation or under the new TPP and the other
internet censorship.
Yep. It's all coming to a head, and people need to understand this.
Well, listen, I just want to share a special request for everybody. People have heard me, talk about a guy named Cornelius II, who's been one of the most generous men of God I've ever met in my life. He had two employees who stole close to $500,000 from him out of his company, and he's facing bankruptcy even tonight. He had those same two employees start their own company and then underbid the jobs that he was to do, and he can't make payroll. And this guy's got 65 employees. Now he just sends me this. I'm going to pray for him on the air, Doug. This is the most generous man I've ever known. I call him Cornelius II. Please say a prayer for the family of Justin Smith, one of my employees, tragically killed today on a job site. He had 6 children, was run over by another company's bulldozer who was not paying attention. Satan is throwing everything he has at me and my company. This poor boy lived for his family and never missed a day. I'm at a loss for words and cannot stop shedding tears for all that's taking place. I'm not sure if I'm meant to go on. Some are telling me all these things that are taking place should tell me to shut the doors. Please pray. I'm so lost right now. I would like to ask everyone to join with me. This man has so touched so many lives, and he needs a miracle. Father, in Jesus' name, I know that there are people listening to this broadcast all over the world. And Lord, this is one of your servants who has absolutely, God, gone into the annals of history as being just like his namesake, Cornelius I. Lord, always at the ready. And now, Father, I ask first of all that you give, Lord, my brother Cornelius, a miracle, Lord, in his business, Lord. What the devil has robbed, Lord, pay back 7 times. I ask for such a spirit of conviction to come upon those 2 thieves that stole his entire business from him and now have put him into bankruptcy to be brought under the conviction of the Holy Ghost. I ask that you'll raise up a champion, Lord, in the Tampa area, or one of your men that will step in and help him with his business, Lord. I also pray for, Lord, the family of Justin Smith. I pray that, God, there will be a miracle. He's got 6 kids. I pray, Father, in Jesus' name, that you'll intervene and interfere in the plans of the enemy for Michael, in Jesus' name, Lord. Lord, your word says, in that day, Lord, let this be the day for him, God. I know, Lord, I know how under attack he is. I know how beaten down he is. But, Father, you are the lifter up of our souls. And I praise you, Lord. I worship you and thank you for working, Lord, even now that there would be a testimony of your miracle, Lord, to the servant of God, to his company. And, Lord, please stop his partner from committing suicide, Jesus. Lord, you've been so faithful, even at this mention of saying God loves you to the people out there in listening land who have not taken their lives at the exact moment it's been said. Lord, I ask for a miracle, and I ask, God, that every intercessor will pray for Cornelius for that the situation will turn. And I rebuke the devourer. I rebuke every financial curse over him, rebuke every spoken curse, every plot, plan, scheme, and snare that has been worked against him in Jesus' name. And Lord, lift up his soul, I pray, in the mighty name of Jesus. And Lord, I thank you that where 2 or more agree on earth is touching anything on earth, it will be done for us by our Father in heaven. Lord, in those days, Lord, you said in those days that you would arise. You said in those days that the hearts of the fathers would return to the son and vice versa. I pray, God, that this would be a time when you would answer prayer, Lord. Lord, my heart breaks for him. I know again, Lord, that we're not commended on what we do, but Lord, because of the gospel, that's what has guided him, directed him, and being the most generous man I think I've ever met. So, Father, I just pray for a miracle, Lord, that his business will not go underground or will not go under, and that, Father, his employees will not all lose their jobs. And God, somehow you'll bring a miracle to that lady who lost her husband and to the 6 children that lost their daddy, in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen.
You know, Doug, I know, and Joe, I can tell you this: the greatest joy on my heart has been when people have said, thank you for pointing me to Jesus. Have I been the worst example of a Christian that could ever be? Absolutely. Is my mouth under control? Absolutely not. Do I have issues in loving my enemies? Most certainly do. No place in the Bible does God say I have to love the devil, okay, or his spawn. And I'm not justifying anything. For those of you who are better Christians than I am, that go, and there is no such thing as better. I'm just a forgiven guy that loves Jesus a lot. And nobody can take that away from you or me. So I would just encourage everybody to stand on this. I want to share a neat email. I don't know this brother, but I love this brother's heart, okay? And I'm choking up. I'm sorry. I came back to Jesus Christ because of you. My roommates came to Jesus Christ because of you. My family is awake because of you. Our friends are awake because of you. Thank you. Don't stop doing your alerts. Let me share this. That's all because of the goodness of God, which is leading men to repentance. If I were to stop my voice today, God would raise up someone in my place tomorrow. And just because, and I want to say this, just because, and I thank you, Lori, for this, Putin kills more terrorists in 5 days than Obama kills in 5 years. Let me share why that's so obvious to everyone. Because all of the terrorism in the world is being orchestrated out of Pennsylvania Avenue. And all of the slaughter of Christians is equally being orchestrated out of Pennsylvania Avenue. Oh, for the men and women to stand up. Oh, for those of you who have been bought with a price. Oh, for those of you who have been forgiven so much. Please be grateful to Jesus. We owe him everything. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm not leaving the airways, at least not to my knowledge. I'm not doing my website. I'm still doing what I've always done. My issue is posting alerts that can cost people their lives. That's my whole issue. Pray for me that God will give me an answer.